Hey everyone, Brandon here. We have made many of every type videos over the past 3 years. Wow, that feels wild to say. Anyway, there are definitely more on the way, but until then, here is a marathon of every type video we have made so far. Enjoy!
Meowth is one of the only Pokemon to have 2 regional forms, which led many to question, what would a regional form of Meowth of each type look like? Well, today, I'm here to answer that question. Let's get started. Before we begin, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Only about 10% of you guys watching are subscribed, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos. One more thing, we now have memberships on the channel. Becoming a member at any level really helps me keep these videos coming. So if you join today, that would be greatly appreciated. There are also some awesome perks that come with being a member, like exclusive emotes you can use in the comments, sneak peeks at upcoming videos, and even getting videos a day early. So go check it out. Anyway, on to what we came here for. Meowths!
That's right!
So we already have 3 of our types occupied with Normal, Dark, and Steel from the original Meowth and its existing forms. So that leaves 15 types to be filled. So why don't we begin with the types of the starters, Grass, Fire, and Water. Starting us off, here is Liweeka Meowth, a grass type form for Meowth. This Meowth hails from the Liweeka region over on Instagram, and is inspired by panthers and vines. It is adapted to the dangers of Liweeka's lush jungles, and they use their vine-like tails to swing around the jungle. Let's serve up some heat with this fire-type regional form of Meowth from the Zorneo region over on Instagram. This Meowth is a protector of the forests of Zorneo, and can use its flammable whiskers as darts. A water-type Meowth was a tricky one to find, but there are 2 that I managed to find that are super cool. Meet Nenglendian and Newfoundorian Meowth. Both are based on catfish, with Newfoundorian Meowth resembling more of a sailor, and Nenglendian Meowth taking on more fish-like features with its coin turning into more of a scale. This was actually the only art I could find of Nenglendian Meowth, because the original creator hasn't made a digital version of it. This is actually from a group piece including a bunch of Meowth forms across Instagram. Some will even appear later in this video. This was done by the talented Cinderil, so make sure to go show them your support. Next up, we have a pair of Meowth coming from the Canberra region. Here are the 2 forms of Canberran Meowth, Ice and Ghost type. These forms came about because of a rapid increase of Meowth in the Canberra region. So a containment law was put into effect. Some Meowth fled into the icy mountains, while others fled to large urban areas. Many never escaped, and at night in the urban areas, you can hear the wailing of Canberran Meowth seeking justice. For the rock type, my own region, Cornera, is home to a rock type Meowth form which we discussed in our regional variants video. So go check that out if you haven't. Don't be shocked by this next form. It's an electric type Meowth from the Roviero region. This Meowth is an untamed apex predator that can run at lightning fast speeds. There is also this really amazing electric type Meowth done by the Maui region over on Instagram. They actually also did this next regional form. It's a poison type Meowth. This Meowth roams the sewers and canals of large cities, and it carries a large amount of toxins in its bite. A fairy-type Meowth has been featured a lot in the Fakemon community, so I had to pick what I thought was best, and this one has to be my favorite. Meet Wescoan Meowth. This is a more domesticated version of Meowth. Because of all the love it has been shown over the generations in Wesco, it has adapted its behavior to match and is known to show a gentle love for those who care for them. Next up is Psychic, and we can't help but go with the iconic Eldu form Meowth from the fan game Pokemon Xenoverse and Elite Four over on Instagram. In ancient times, this Meowth was considered sacred, which has led to this Meowth's quality of life being much higher. This has also led it to become more superb, but also more fussy. For the fighting type Meowth, we look to none other than the Mojave region, which we just interviewed the creator of the region, TubbsAZ, on the Just Like Magic podcast. So go check that out if you missed it. Anyway, here is Mojavan Meowth. This little guy is based on cowboys, and it just works so perfectly. For these next 2 types, I had a hard time finding decent concepts for them. So I put out a story on Instagram, and my good friend Malmistex reached out with a design he had been working on for a ground type Meowth for his region, Talasia. And we even collaborated and made a flying type Meowth as well. So here is Talasian Meowth and our flying type Meowth. Talasian Meowth is based on sphinxes and actual Persian cats. The flying type is based on storm clouds and the Himalayan cat. A dragon type Meowth. How would one go about that? Well, Dragoboy1, living up to his name, managed to bust out an amazing concept for one with this Meowth form based on chimeras. Lastly, we have the most oddball type that no one has touched from what I have seen, and that is bug type. From that same Instagram story I mentioned earlier, another artist reached out, JM Pokey, with this awesome concept for a bug type, mixing aspects of a scarab and a scorpion, and it just looks incredible. So there you go, a Meowth for every type. Which one was your favorite? Let me know in the comments down below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I would love to do more videos like this, so please show your support to let me know if I should make more. Also, make sure to go follow all of the artists and regions whose Meowths I showed off today. They are all listed in the description down below. Anyway, that's all for now, so I will see you guys next time. Eeveelutions, the slang term for the 8 single-typed evolutions of Eevee. Since the very first generation of Pokemon, fans have wondered what an evolution of every type would look like. So let's answer that question. So obviously we have the 8 existing evolutions, which are Water, Electric, Fire, Psychic, Dark, Grass, Ice, and Fairy. That leaves us with 10 potential evolutions. But before we start exploring what they might look like, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We do Fakemon content just like this every week, so don't miss out. Also, become a member if you want to show some extra support to the channel. Anyway, let's show off those new evolutions. Starting us off is Mummion, the ghost-type evolution from the Liwika region. If we were to ever get an Egypt-based region, this needs to be a thing. It is by far the best execution of a ghost-type evolution I have ever seen. We also showed off this mon in the very first region review, so go check that out if you haven't. Next up, we have a rock-type evolution from the Mediz region, Marbleon. This one is based on the Ionic columns of Greek architecture, as well as marble statues. This is such a unique take on a rock-type evolution, and it is my personal favorite that I've seen. A flying-type evolution is a tricky one. Many in the past have opted to try and mix in some kind of wings on it. But instead of going in that direction, Tubbs AZ went for a more elemental version of the flying type with his evolution, Floofeon. I love how he kept this mon simple but effective. Using clouds as a base for the flying type works so well, and mixes with the idea of an already floofy Eevee perfectly, and doesn't make the typing feel forced. Next up, we have a few evolutions from the Almera region. Starting us off is Meleon, a fighting type evolution. I love the Street Fighter, Ryu, and Ken vibes it gives off. If an evolution were to ever make it in Smash, this would be it. Next up is the poison type evolution, Toxeon. Turning Eevee's floof into a poison cloud is an incredible way to incorporate the typing. And the skull pattern on its head evokes that feeling of a label you would see on poison in classic cartoons. Lastly from Almera is Sandeon, a ground type evolution. I found this evolution to be interesting because instead of trying to directly reference the ground typing itself in its design, it references a ground type Pokémon, Mudsdale. It is also based on a Kimono Girl, which is perfect given the connection between the Kimono Girls of Johto and Eeveelutions. So, a normal type evolution is a bit of a complicated idea, because the entire point of Eevee is that it evolves into fun, differently typed Pokemon, because its DNA is unstable, and therefore doesn't evolve normally. But I have a concept I think would work. This is Eeveeon from the Brassar region. So I think a good way of keeping this mon fun and viable is to make it still have unstable DNA, and give it an ability like Protean or Libero. Or maybe an ability like Multi-type, where its type could be changed depending on the evolutionary stone it's holding, each one corresponding to a different evolution. This would continue the flexibility Eevee offers even though it has evolved. Let me know what you think of this idea. Next up are 2 evolutions by Bad that take on some unique types for an evolution. We will start with the Dragon type, Scaleon. What I appreciate about this one is how well it mixes the mammalian aspects of Eevee and the reference to Salamence in its coloration. And now, for the Bug type. Just like I said with the Meowth in our Meowth of Every Type video, Bug type is a tricky thing to mix with a mammal like Eevee, but I think Bad managed to do it very well with Intoueon. It mixes the fluffiness of a moth with Eevee's floof perfectly. The little aspects Badafra added really make this cohesive, like making its tail look like a bee stinger and the fur on its legs look like grasshopper legs. Lastly, we have Steel type. There are so many takes on this concept, but my favorite has to be Samurion by Solian. This is such a different interpretation on not only a Steel type evolution, but especially one with armor as well. I definitely could see something like this in Legends Arceus, or if we ever got another New Japan region, though that is probably not likely. But that's all for now. Let me know which one was your favorite. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and become a member if you want to show some extra support to the channel. With that, I will see you guys next time. It's spoopy season! Halloween is tomorrow, so to celebrate, why don't we bust some ghosts with a Yamask and Cofagrigus of every type? So Yamask got a regional variant in Gen 8 with the Ghost Ground type Galarian Yamask, in which it changed the item it's holding in its tail from a mask to a chunk of stone. This also gave it a brand new evolution with Runerigus. So, those in the Fakemon community thought, what if Yamask held other items with its tail? What types and new evolutions would it get? So let's take a look at them. But before we begin, in the spirit of the season, make sure to spook that like button, stab the subscribe button, and exercise that notification bell. Let's start off with a type combo that just finally made it into the actual games, Ghost Normal. This Yamask is holding a worn out Pokédoll instead of its mask, which causes it to evolve into Stuffarigus. This Yamask is said to be the souls of deceased children who cling to the dolls or toys they owned in life. Stuffarigus use giant dolls to hide in, where they lie in wait to capture their prey and drag them into their maw, never to be seen again. While we're on the topic of deceased children, one we probably shouldn't stay on for long, let's talk about the Steel-type Yamask from my own region, Cornera. It is said to be the spirits of miners' children who got lost in the mine. They carry a pickaxe to try to be helpful to miners even in the afterlife. Corneran Yamask evolves into Minerigus. Minerigus wants to help the miners as well, but just ends up spooking them instead. Keeping with the spooky origin stories, here is a Poison-type Yamask from Chris Roomba. As you can tell, it's based on current events. This Yamask is said to be the spirit of people who died from demonetized. When it evolves, it becomes Cofagrigus. It now inhabits a box of disposable face masks. It will approach passersby and strap a face covering on them. Some think this is Cofagrigus trying to suffocate people, but it is actually trying to warn them so that they don't share in its untimely fate. So that last Yamask was a bit of a parody, so let's go with another one. Meet this Dragon-type Yamask by Anime Freak 9696. It's a Yamask holding a Dragon Ball! In order to get it to evolve, you must defeat other Yamasks, holding different starred Dragon Balls than your own. But once you do, it becomes Shenrigus. It will grant a single wish to the trainer who helped it evolve. These two speak to my little weeb heart, and I love them so much. So we've had some fun Yamasks, but how about an epic one? Check out this Rock-type Yamask holding an Old Amber by Shiny Gar. These Yamask are drawn to the spirit inside the Old Amber. Their appearance has changed slightly due to the influence of the spirit inside the Amber. When it evolves, it becomes Resarigus. The spirit of the Amber has now manifested itself and essentially fused with the Yamask to become this. It is as vicious as the Pokemon whose spirit inhabited the Amber. Next up, we have this Grass-type Yamask by Gabriel Casado Smeargle. It is holding a Calabash gourd that is said to be able to capture spirits. Long ago, a pirate found a Yamask that had lost its mask, so he trapped it inside the gourd. It then grew to like the gourd and see it as its home, and now carries it around. It evolves into Calabascus. It can use its flute to make a hallucinogenic herbal aroma that has been the cause of many people getting lost for days. For the fairy type, we have this Yamask from Maumastex. It is holding an item called the Arceus' Eye, which is inspired by the Greek evil eye. But the Arceus' Eye has the power to cleanse the Yamask and make it pure. It evolves into Angerigus. It is inspired by biblically accurate angels, which are terrifying and totally fit in with this line. Next we have a few by the Aussie artist. First is this bug-type Yamask holding a gold scarab charm. It evolves into Scarabegus, which is also inspired by man-faced beetles. Second is an ice-type Yamask holding a snowball, and I'm sure you can tell what it's going to evolve into. So here is Frosterigus. This has a little bit of the Nightmare Before Christmas vibe to it. Let me know if you'd like me to do some Christmas-themed Pokemon when it comes time. Last from this artist is a water-type Yamask holding an old sunken lock covered in kelp. It evolves into Lockerigus. It is of course inspired by Davy Jones' Locker, which definitely fits in with this line. Now for a few by Devil D-Man. First is this fire-type Yamask, which has traded its old mask in for a Tiki mask. It evolves into Tiki-Regus. Its old mask now returns as an accent on its head. Second is a dark-type Yamask, which is holding a wooden stake. These Yamask actually use this stake to defend themselves against their own evolution. It evolves into this more evil version of Cofagrigus. Little do the Yamask know that the stake is actually what's causing them to evolve into this new form. So, it becomes an evolutionary cycle of cat and mouse. Last by Devil D-Man is this electric-type Yamask holding this mysterious tape. I bet you can see where this is going. After the Yamask watch the tape, they are drawn to the Jubilife TV station, where they evolve into Smararigus. It is rumored that the TV station is covering up some victims claimed by Smararigus. For our last few types, here are a few Yamask by Goomy. First is this Psychic-type Yamask holding a crystal ball. It evolves into Gazerigus. They are both based on fortune tellers. These last two were actually a collaborative effort between Goomy and I. First up is a flying-type Yamask holding a feather pillow. It evolves into Featherigus. They are based on death crowns. In Appalachian folklore, death crowns, also called angel crowns, are clumps of feathers found in the pillows of people who died in their sleep. Some say it means the person went to heaven. Others see it as a bad omen. For our last Yamask, here's a fighting-type variant holding a boxing glove. The boxing glove causes it to evolve into Bruiserigus. The Yamask's eye marking is based on black eyes, which, you know, are common in boxing. Also, its tail looks like a spring-loaded boxing glove. And Bruiserigus is based on punching bags, but it is also a reference to body bags. Its body is literally in the punching bag, and it is a reference to the exclamation, "He put that dude in a body bag." Can you tell I'm proud of this one? But that's it for this spooky assortment of variants. Which one was your favorite? Make sure to let me know in the comments. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. With that, I will see you guys next time. The time has come. We did Meowths, we did Yamasks and Cofagrigus? Cofagrigi? Anyway, it's time for a Regi of every type. We already have a third of the types taken care of with the existing Regis, being Rock, Ice, Steel, Normal, Dragon, and Electric. On the last two of every type videos, I got so many comments asking about types that already exist. Like, where's Steel-type Meowth? What about Ghost-type Yamask? So, if you see a comment like this down below, or in future installments, please help guide these lost souls to the obvious. So each Regi so far, sans Regigigas, has represented some kind of historical time period, or age. Regirock, the Stone Age, Regice, the Ice Age, Registeel, the Bronze Age, Regidrago, the Middle Ages, and Regieleki, the Modern Age. So in order to make a Regi of each type, we're going to kind of have to abandon that concept. Just because not every type is going to fit a period of history. Like, what age is grass going to represent? Leaf Age? Anyway, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future of every type videos. Let's get started with a few from Meowmistex. First, the flying type. Kind of an odd one to imagine, but I think Regisky handles it perfectly.
It evokes that feeling of looking up to the summit of a mountain and feeling like it almost touches the skies. Regisky may look like solid rock, but it is actually an intangible being made of pure air. You could say Regigigas pulled Regisky out of thin air. Next up on the opposite end of the spectrum is ground type. Rock and ground type as elements are often hard to distinguish from one another, especially when it comes to Regis, which are essentially elemental golems of that type. But Regiterra manages to make that distinction well. Making a Regi that looks like layers of soil, clay, and sediment is a great way to separate it from the jagged rocks of Regirock. It honestly looks like Regigigas just cut out a square chunk of earth and said, "Here, you're a Regi now." Lastly from Maumas is the bug type, Regicomb, which was actually my idea. Obviously, it is based on honeycomb given both in the design and the name, which I think is pretty clever. It also has 4 legs and 2 arms, to reference how insects typically have 6 legs. Also, its legs are bee stingers. Anyhow, let's talk lore. The tale of Regicomb goes like this. Once upon a time, Regigigas was feeling weak and starving. It sequestered itself to a forest in an unknown region. In this forest, there were many Teddiursa, Combee, and Cutiefly, who saw Regigigas and decided to help by gathering up as much honey as possible and feeding it to Regigigas. Having its strength replenished, Regigigas used some of the honey to create a guardian for these Pokemon as thanks. And so, Regicomb was born. In my Meowth of every type video, check that out if you missed it, a lot of you expressed disappointment in the fighting type not being represented by Subjectively's Mozzie and Meowth. Well, this time around, I reached out to Jack from Subjectively, and he gave me the go-ahead to feature the Regis from the Mazza region. So first off is the grass type, Regiwood. There is so much I enjoy about this design. I love how it has such a different shape from the other Regis, being super tall, cylindrical, and kind of lanky. Its design inspiration of wood carvings and primitive machinery merges so well with the already existing Regis. I can vividly imagine seeing this Regi in a Pokémon movie, maybe in the jungle in some ancient ruins, kind of like in the first movie with the discovery of Mew. I also love its lore and origin story, but we will get to that in a bit. Next up is the fighting type, Regibrute. I love the idea of this being a homunculus, aka a golem of flesh. I think the design definitely manages to capture the feeling of other humanoid fighting type Pokemon, while maintaining its Reginess. Though, all I can think of when I see this design is, my body is Regi. Also, its eyes are shaped like a person flexing, which is hilarious and incredible at the same time. Last from Subjectively is the fairy type, Regiturnal. Honestly, this might be my favorite design of the whole video. I absolutely adore the use of biblically accurate angels as a design basis for a fairy type. I love it when fairy types are not these cutesy pink and girly mons. Like how the Grimmsnarl line and the Gen 8 box legends changed what a fairy type could be. So this is a huge win in my book. Also, the name is just perfection. The lore behind them is something created Regiturnal. Jack left it open-ended for the viewer, so I like to think it was a combination of Regigigas and Arceus due to its angelic design basis. Maybe Regigigas took some of Arceus' power when creating Regiturnal. Maybe to combat Regidrago or something. Anyway, in turn, Regiturnal created Regibrute, and Regibrute created Regiwood. These represent the creation of humanity, and humanity's creation, which is just an incredible bit of lore to replace the lack of the ages concept in these three. I also saw a comment saying Regibrute created Regiwood as a training dummy, which is just hilarious, and absolutely now my headcanon. Make sure to check out Subjectively's video on these Regis for more information. Next up is the Psychic type. For this, we have Regipsyche from Vroomfish. Yes, it is a brain. Its arms and hands are also eye stalks and eyes. I just found this concept to be super clever. While looking like a brain, it isn't overly grotesque. It's quite sleek and smooth. Oh god, it's a smooth brain, isn't it? Well, this design pleases my smooth brain, so whatever. This Regi was born from the mind of an ancient man who tried to fuse himself with a Pokemon, and is a well of pure psychic power. So much so, it releases this power through lasers shooting out of its eyes. Superman, Cyclops, and Icarus are all quaking right now. Now for the Dark type, we have Regi Dark by Devil D-Man. And my god is it dark. Darkrai, eat your heart out. Regidark looks like it came straight out of Dark Souls or Bloodborne in the best way. How many more times am I going to say dark? From its demonic wings, to the protruding pelvic bone, to the upside-down cross formation of its eyes, it screams evil incarnate. A complete antithesis to Regiturnal, which I love. I mean, this thing is so edgy I could probably cut myself if I get too close. But it would probably stab me with those lanky dagger arms first. In my headcanon, this was actually created by Giratina as an emissary of darkness. Also from Devil D-Man, we have the Poison type, Regitoxic. Man, this thing looks more toxic than the Pokemon community if there isn't a national dex. I love this interpretation of poison typing. Just so many poisonous spikes everywhere. And it almost looks strangely aquatic in nature. It gives me huge Toxapex vibes. Continuing in the kind of grim theme we have going on here, for the Ghost type, we have Regighost by Trevenart. According to legend, Regighost was created by Regigigas using the wandering souls of Pokemon that couldn't pass on to the afterlife. It absorbs the souls of those who have lost their way. Although, it's said that Regighost also releases the souls through the nail on its head to another dimension, to help give them a new opportunity. It is believed that the talisman on its face keeps it in harmony and harmless to others. Honestly, this thing is just the perfect Ghost-type Pokemon. It references the stereotypical sheet ghosts, the move Curse, and Zhongxi, also known as Chinese hopping zombies. Yes, that is a thing. Look it up. Last up are the final two elemental types, Water and Fire. Both are by Wally Fakemon. For the Water type, we have Regihydro. This Regi is said to be responsible for all life on the planet, which makes sense given water is needed for life to be sustained on any planet, at least that we know of currently. Regihydro can create torrential rains, rivers, and seas, and the plants on its body provide enormous amounts of oxygen. For the Fire type, we have Regignio. This Regi, once upon a time, reigned as an active volcano that could turn an island into a pool of magma in an instant. It was recently rediscovered buried beneath a vast desert. Its temperature is immeasurable as it melts even the most advanced machinery that gets near it. It's only slightly less heated than the Pokemon community when there isn't a national... Wait, I made this joke already, didn't I? Due to their typing and hidden abilities, Primordial Sea and Desolate Land, these two are believed to have been created millennia ago as a result of the Great Wars between Groudon and Kyogre. But there you go, a Regi for each type. Let me know which one was your favorite in the comments below. Make sure to check out the wonderful artists who made this video possible in the description below. Also, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And with that, I will see you guys next time. Goomy! This little slime dragon is the cutest Pokemon in existence. And that's a fact. Totally not just my opinion. Totally. So why don't we spread the Goomy love by making a Goomy of every type? Hey everybody, Brandon here. So recently in Pokemon Legends Arceus, we were introduced to Hisuian Sliggoo and Hisuian Goodra. I, along with others, became curious as to what a Hisuian Goomy might look like. Some, like the incredible artist Goompy, imagined a bunch of different typings for Goomy, though I don't know why you would possibly have an inclination to do such a thing. But after seeing those amazing variants, it had me feeling inspired to make this video and make a bunch of Goomies of my own. Unlike previous of every type videos, Goomy doesn't actually have any variants. So there will be a whopping 17 new Goomies, because obviously we already have Dragon. Looking at you, comment section. But before we begin this Goomylicious endeavor, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to keep up to date with future videos. Also, I really don't plug this at all, but make sure to go follow me over on Twitter. I'm trying to hit 1K followers by the end of this year, so let's see if we can make that happen. Also, make sure to check out my other socials using the link tree in the description. So about half of these Goomies were done by Goompy, but the other half I commissioned my good friend Kai_Fakemon SR for. So we'll start with the ones I did with Kai. Starting us off is the Steel type. This of course is going to be Hisuian Goomy. Like I said before, this is kind of one I wish would be real. I understand why it's not, but it's still fun to imagine. So for this one, Kai and I tried to replicate that feeling from Sliggoo and Goodra, of almost having the shell overwhelm the Pokemon. I mean, the concept behind this line and their Colossian counterpart is that the Hisuian line is more reserved, in their shell, and the Colossian line has come out of their shell. You can see this in how it becomes more friendly looking and less depressed. Another little design detail is we made the cheeks of Goomy a little more desaturated, more of a greenish gray to match the eyes and dots of Sliggoo, which are also more of a desaturated green. This little detail also matches how the color and vibrancy of the Colossian Goomy line has become more subdued with the Hisuian line. This is another Hisuian variant that's an example of, what did you do to my boy? Next up, here is a rock-type Goomy. This Goomy is based on the Dorona albilinita sea slug. Probably butchered that Latin, but get used to it. We're going to talk about a lot of snails and slugs in this video that don't have common names. The Dorona is a particularly impressive looking sea slug, and definitely caught my eye when researching slugs for these variants. Its serrata, these little spiky parts on its back, reminded me heavily of crystalline structures found in caves, specifically that of quartz and amethyst. So this Goomy is modeled after quartz and amethyst geodes. The combination of Goomy plus Dorona plus geodes just fits the rock type perfectly. This Goomy is more stern and stubborn. They won't be bothered to move unless they're in danger. This is to reflect the hardened and immovable nature of crystals. These Goomy are often mistaken for actual crystals because they sit so still, which leads to them becoming even more stern and stubborn. Speaking of Angie boys, here is a fighting type Goomy. This Goomy is partially based on the fighting conch snail, which has the incredible binomial name of Strombus pugilis. Yes, I know. It's based on a snail, but it doesn't have a shell? Well, the overall design just didn't lend itself to a shell, and slugs are basically just snails without shells anyway. The purple aspects of this design are meant to reference the black eyes and bruises that fighters receive. You know, when they're fighting. It also has a little anger mark that it shares with Primeape. This Goomy uses its antenna? Eyes? What are those things? Anyway, it uses these things to punch. So, yes, all punch moves are available to learn, and it actually makes sense, unlike freaking Wooper. While we're on the topic of ground types, here's this ground type Goomy. Unlike the past few Goomies, which were based on snails or slugs, this Goomy is actually based on a flatworm, specifically the Eurylepta leparda, or the leopard flatworm. The pattern on its back reminded me of sand, so it gave me the idea of a Goomy who could flatten itself out and almost merge with the sand to camouflage itself. Kind of like Sandygast in Palisand. Also, its coloration reminds me of pancakes and syrup, which is just another reason to love this cutie. For another Goomy based on a flatworm, here is a flying type Goomy. This Goomy isn't based on any specific flatworm, but more so the way flatworms look when they swim. I mean, look at this. It's so beautiful and trippy, like a Beatles music video. To me, it almost looks like a magic carpet flying through the air. So that's what inspired this Goomy. Its coloration is meant to look like the sky and clouds. The patterns on its sides are air current, and its antennae... Okay, you know what? I'm gonna look this up. Wait, they're horns? Okay, the horns are meant to look like fluffy clouds. Also, it has a kind of a little air current mustache going on, and you know how I love facial hair. This Goomy likes to zoom through the air without a care in the world. You could say they're living on cloud 9.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Want to see something else that's trippy and beautiful? How about this psychic type Goomy? This Goomy is based on, and I'm gonna try my best here, the Phylodesmium poendimiae slug, which means spun of light. Did I do good? Okay, cool. This psychedelic-looking Goomy's horns and coloration are both inspired by the serrata of the spun of light slug. But like I said, it's meant to look psychedelic, because this Goomy is definitely tripping. This is a reference to the supposed link between psychedelics and extrasensory perception, aka ESP. This Goomy may seem confused, but its horns are actually highly sensitive receivers of psychic energy that it uses to find its way around and defend itself if necessary. Speaking of horns, here is this normal type Goomy. This Goomy is partially inspired by the Triton's trumpet snail, except for its shell is literally a trumpet. Well, not quite a trumpet, but it's kind of a mix of a bunch of different brass instruments. But now its horns are horns. Should be easy to remember that now. This Goomy uses its shell to make incredibly loud noises, rivaling that of a Loudred. The louder the Goomy, the stronger it is. For the dark type, here is this Goomy. It is based on assassin snails and actual assassins. Its horns are of course supposed to look like demonic horns to give off that evil vibe. Pokemon breeders and farmers will use this form of Goomy if they have unwanted pests sneaking into their farm. Let's just say they get the job done. Lastly, from Kai and I, is this electric type Goomy. It is based on this Super Saiyan looking dude, the Genolus Fuscus. Also, as I'm sure you've noticed, its cheeks and brow line are a reference to Frankenstein's monster, who in and of itself was brought to life using lightning. And for a third reference, back in 2012, scientists from Clarkson University and Ben Gurion University of Negev managed to create a snail-powered battery by collecting small amounts of power over several months by processing the glucose in the snail's blood. We live in a crazy world, man. Jeez. The rest of these Goomies are made by Goompy. To start us off is this incredible water-type Goomy based on the Glaucus atlanticus, or the blue sea dragon. Blue sea dragons are the coolest creatures in nature, and making a Goomy variant based on them works so well. I love the way Goompy incorporated the sea dragon's serrata into a mustache and eyebrows. It reminds me of the wise dragons of Chinese folklore. Next, here is the fire-type Goomy. This one is based on the scaly foot snail, whose natural habitat is hanging around hydrothermal vents, heated by underlying magma, which can reach up to 750 degrees Fahrenheit. That is one hot snail. Don't take that out of context. To complete the starter type trio, here is this grass type Goomy. It is of course based on banana slugs and actual bananas. The banana slug combo is definitely a concept I've wanted to see Game Freak explore. And this is a great example as to why. This concept fits so well onto Goomy. Next up is this bug type Goomy. And its inspiration is a little gross, so consider this your warning. Okay, good? Alright, this Goomy is inspired by the green-banded broadsack, a parasite that hangs out in the snail's eye stalks. Yes, now my eyes hurt too. Speaking of creepy things, how about a ghost type Goomy? While being a ghost, its inspiration is actually not creepy like the last one. This Goomy is inspired by sea angels. Isn't that nice? Aren't they just so beautiful? These last few aren't actually based on snails, slugs, or even flatworms. For the poison type, we have this Goomy. It is based on tar pits and the fossils found within them. I love how Goompy made it look like a caveman with that heavy brow line. Maybe we could see this in a prehistoric Pokemon region. Next, here is the fairy type Goomy. This one's based on bubblegum. I love the little personality it has, trying to pull itself off the ground. I imagine this is a frequent occurrence for this poor Goomy. Its horns being bubbles is so cute and reminds me of space buns, which just makes me love this design more. Last but not least is this ice type Goomy. It is based on a dropped ice cream cone, which is adorable and hilarious. The shell being the cone is ingenious. I also love the personality shift on this one. It being more sleepy looking is clearly a reference to how when your body temperature drops, you become drowsy, like in cases of hypothermia. But that's a Goomy of every type. Let me know which one was your favorite. Also, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Also, go follow me on all my socials. Follow the link tree in the description. With that, I will see you guys next time.
Rotom, a little plasma ghost Pokemon with the power to possess household appliances and other electronics, with each thing Rotom possessing giving it a new secondary type. So let's see what a Rotom of every type might look like. Hey everyone, Brandon here. So as I said before, Rotom has the ability to possess electronics. Sometimes it is used to pull pranks on people, such as its initial forms. Other times it's used to assist them in daily life, like in all the forms introduced after Gen 7. With 6 out of the 18 types being occupied by these Rotom forms, there's room left to wonder what appliances or electronics Rotom would have to possess to get the other 12 types. So to find this out, I asked you guys for help by participating in a contest I hosted in March to celebrate reaching 50,000 subscribers on the channel. We are now at... What? You guys are absolutely wild with the support on this channel. Thank you, truly, from the bottom of my heart. It really means the world to me. Anyway, the community went so hard for this contest, and I got so many more submissions than I was expecting. I was initially just gonna have one winner for each type, but you guys surprised me with so many fun and amazing concepts that I couldn't help but feature a bunch of different forms for each type. So if you're excited to see a bunch of fun Rotom forms, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you like the concept of different Pokemon of every type, there's a playlist of past of every type videos you can check out through this card or through the link in the description. Anyway, let's get into some Rotom forms. Take it away, Cartoon Me. Starting us off is the Psychic type. For this one, most of you seem to have the same idea. Rotom possessing a TV, to reference subliminal messaging in media, as well as us being hypnotized by our televisions, being stuck watching them like some kind of hypnotized zombie. These 3 entries illustrate this concept perfectly, with this one by I'm Solart actually using its powers to soothe children and adults alike. One other concept I found really fun is this form of Rotom that has possessed a calculator, getting across the whole idea of the psychic typing being associated with intelligence. For the normal type, there were a couple concepts that caught my eye, particularly these 2 which are based on 2 different kinds of speakers. One a CD player, and the other a Bluetooth speaker, both playing into the normal type's affinity for sound-based Pokémon and moves. Another concept that I really enjoyed is this Rotom that has possessed a copy machine, which refers to the normal type having Pokémon that can copy others, such as Ditto or Smeargle. For the rock type, we have these forms of Rotom that have possessed a jackhammer. I love this idea. I can imagine these forms just wreaking havoc on the sidewalks of cities. Another concept for the rock type that I really enjoyed was this form of Rotom that has possessed a rock salt lamp. I find this hilarious because I've always had one of these in my home, and I feel like there's at least one in every home nowadays, so you could even call this a household appliance. Also, I wanted to give a quick shout out to this form, a Rotom electric guitar, that is electric rock type. Great pun. Though I don't usually do this for of every type videos, I decided to include the pure electric typing for a Rotom form. Because in this situation, I feel like there would be a Rotom form for it, and these 2 concepts are exactly what I thought of. These Rotom have possessed generators. I really like the idea of these Rotom coming to the rescue during a power outage. I could even see an episode of the anime where this form of Rotom comes to the rescue when, ironically, an electric type gym's power goes out. For the ground type, there are these 2 forms in which a Rotom has possessed a shop vacuum, or shop vac for short, with the ground typing coming from shop vacs picking up huge amounts of dirt and dust off the floor. I imagine these Rotom would take all the stuff they've sucked up and use it for a sand attack or sand tomb. For the dark type, there were a couple very different concepts that I liked. One was this one by Double Cheeseburger, in which Rotom has possessed an old rotary phone, so it can make prank calls without having to worry about caller ID. The other is a Rotom that has possessed an old PC by Splat the Crystal. It has become a glitch in this PC and corrupted it. You can even see it has a missing note for a hand, which could be a Pokémon whose data was corrupted because of this Rotom form. Spooky. For the Steel type, it seems the general consensus was on Rotom possessing some form of saw. Here are some forms in which a Rotom has possessed a chainsaw and another that has possessed a table saw. I especially love how the table saw one has its hand as a guide for the saw blade. There were also 2 other concepts for Steel type I really enjoyed. There's this one by Sidonia Arts that has Rotom possessing an iron, which is just a hilarious pun I couldn't resist featuring. The other is this toaster form by Sketchy Sketchbook. This Rotom can shoot toast-shaped flash cannons, which is also super hilarious. For the poison type, we have these 2 Rotom forms that are possessed blenders. The blender being used for the poison type made a lot of sense to me. I just imagine Rotom being like one of those challenge videos where they're just grabbing a bunch of random ingredients, throwing them into a blender and making the world's worst smoothie. Babe, are you okay? You've hardly touched your strawberry horseradish soy sauce mustard smoothie. These last few types were all over the place when it came to what Rotom would possess. So let's begin with the type that was the most scattered as far as forms, the fairy type. For these next few, I'm just going to list a bunch of forms that I found fun and why. First up, we have this form, which is a Rotom that has possessed an electric toothbrush. I love the play on the tooth fairy being why it has the fairy typing. I also picture it having bubblegum toothpaste on the bristles. Next, we have this camera Rotom. It can use Dazzling Gleam, and I imagine it probably uses Flash too, which I love. After that, we have this form of Rotom that has possessed fairy lights. I love the pun of using the name to explain the typing. On top of that, fairy is ostensibly the light type, so the typing works as a double pun for both parts of the name, fairy lights. Speaking of lights, we have this Rotom that has possessed a nightlight, once again playing into the fairy typing acting as the light type. After that, we have this form of Rotom that has possessed a Tamagotchi. I just really love the pun of Rotamagotchi for this one. For yet another form, we have this Rotom possessing an artificial Christmas tree, which exudes the fairy typing by giving off some holiday cheer. Lastly, for the fairy type, we have these 3 forms based on oil diffusers and a smoke machine. I really like the idea of Rotom having the fairy typing for the same reason as Aromatisse, giving off a pleasant and calming scent that could even put you to sleep.
The bug type, like in most of every type videos, is a really hard one to pin down design elements for. There were a few that I liked in particular, such as this form in which a Rotom has possessed a sewing machine. I love how this plays on the idea of spider silk to justify the bug typing. Another one is this Rotom that has possessed a buzz saw, which is just a great pun. There's also these two forms which are more great puns. They made Rotom possess a beetle. I found this utterly hilarious in the best way. For the fighting type, we have a few options. A couple that I really thought fit were Rotom possessing some form of video game technology, like these two forms. Another one I found very clever design-wise was this form by Splat the Crystal, in which Rotom has possessed an electric car jack. And look, the car jack looks like Rotom is flexing its muscles. Adorable. Another concept was this one by Sketchy Sketchbook that is a treadmill Rotom. I love the idea of exercise being associated with the fighting type, so this one was especially appealing to me. Last but not least is the dragon type. Though what Rotom possessed was varied, there was a common theme amongst most of the dragon type entries. Rotom possessing something big, like a satellite, or a helicopter, or train, or plane, oh my! I really love the idea of the dragon typing being attributed to a large, intimidating presence like these forms. For some smaller forms, we have this Rotom Leaf Blower by Sergeant Mako, and a Mouse Rotom by KKO Draws. I find the way they both use Rotom's arms as wings really cool. And I love how the mouse is the opposite idea of the other Rotom forms, in that sometimes the biggest strengths come in the smallest packages. And that is all the Rotom forms for this video. Let me know which one was your favorite. And a huge thank you to everyone who participated in this contest. If you enjoyed the contest, make sure to let me know if you'd like to see more in the future. Also, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to keep up to date with future videos. And with that, I will see you guys next time. Fossil Pokemon. Fun, epic, historic creatures revived from their ancient slumber, each based on a different prehistoric creature in real life. So let's see what a fossil Pokemon of each type might look like. Hey everyone, Brandon here. The fossils are some of the most fun and unique Pokemon in the franchise, even receiving their own exhibits in actual museums in Japan that explore their real-life counterparts. Ah! Excavator Pikachu is so cute! With 8 of the 18 types covered by previous fossil Pokemon, today I wanted to explore what the other 10 types could look like and what prehistoric creatures might represent them. If you're excited to see a fossil of each type, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to keep up to date with future videos. So before we get into the fossils, I wanted to give some quick disclaimers. I will not be giving the Galar fossils unmixed forms in this video. The Zolt part of the fossils is our first electric fossil Pokemon, but I will only be discussing fossil Pokemon with the primary rock typing, like all the fossils before Galar. So there will be no primary ice-type fossils or fossils missing that rock typing, like my own in Cornera. This leaves us with 10 types to fill, as we already have Aerodactyl and Archeops for flying, the Kabutops, Amistar, and Caracosta lines for water, the Credillia line for grass, the Armaldo line for bug, the Bastiodon line for steel, the Tyrantrum line for dragon, the Aurorus line for ice, and we even have the pure rock type with the Rampardos line. There, no one can say I missed a type now. Anyway, let's talk about some fossils. To start us off, we have the electric type. I was tempted to just try to find a completed form of the Zolt part of the fossils, but then I would have had to do the rest, and that's not what this video is about. But I have a good substitute for this with Zaptor and Velocivolt from TubsAZ on Instagram. They are both based on raptors, with Velocivolt being based on the Utah raptor specifically. Zaptor can channel electricity through its feathers. When they run, they leave an electrically charged path in their wake. They can achieve breakneck speeds by channeling their electricity through their legs. And Velocivolt hunts in small groups to take down large prey. They can use their claw to send electric impulses into their prey. Their tail also acts as a lightning rod during thunderstorms. This may not have been intentional, but these two give me huge Doc Brown energy from Back to the Future. I can just hear them saying,
generate the 1.21 gigawatts of electricity.
1.21 gigawatts!
Next, we have some more by TubsAZ for the fairy type. Meet Hatterena and Parasong. Hatterena is based on a type of hadrosaur named the Corythosaurus, and ocarinas. Using their unique crest, Hatterena can make a variety of sounds by blowing air through it. Their vocalizations can be calming and soothe their enemies. Parasong is based on parasaurs, flutes, and musicians. You can even see it has its finest orchestra attire on. With a much more defined crest than Hatterena, Parasong is capable of creating intricate music that is unique to each family grouping. For the last one by TubsAZ, we have some fighting type fossil Pokemon.
Here is Triceratops. This cutie is based on axes and the ever-iconic Triceratops. Triceratops' axe-like horn was initially believed to be some kind of ancient tool, but upon further study, Triceratops was discovered and revived. They often stay in large herds with other Triceratops, and their evolutions, Tomatops. Tomatops is based on the Pseudoceratops and axes. Tomatops are one of the few Pokemon that can actually create rudimentary structures by making walls out of the trees they fell. They can cut down trees with ease using their axe-like nose. Timber! Get it? Next up, we have a couple fossils from Fakemon regions on Instagram. First, we have the fire type. For this, we will start with Brazar, which is based on a Dimetrodon. Its name comes from the Egyptian word brazar, meaning flame or heat, and is also a form of fire pit or container. Brazar stores sunlight in its dorsal sail that can generate scorching hot flames. I can imagine cuddling up with my Brazar next to a fire it created. Cute and practical. Brazar evolves into Spinosaur, which is of course based on the Spinosaurus. Spinosaur like to take a dip in lava pools to store heat in their large dorsal sails. Both Brazar and Spinosaur's dorsal fins are meant to resemble sundials, and they both can use them like solar panels. But rather than creating energy, they create intense flames. Next from Michael, we have the Psychic type, which is represented by Sorabrum and Mbembrane, which are both inspired by the Brontosaurus and the Mokele Mbembe, a spiritual being with a striking resemblance to the Brontosaurus. They are both based on seers and crystal balls, with Mbembrane also bearing a resemblance to wise old wizards like Merlin or Gandalf. Sorabrum can tell the future of anyone it touches, which leads to it becoming aloof, because it knows too much. Mbembrane uses its powers of future and past sight to gain infinite wisdom that it can use in combat. For the normal type, we have Rockapi and Troglolith by Elite4 on Instagram, which are based on the evolution of humans from apes and our ancestors such as
Neanderthals.
What is more fitting for the normal type than the most normal thing of all? Us. These Pokemon are considered to be the missing link between humans and Pokemon. As you can see, they have major gender differences, which actually affect more than just their appearance. It also changes their behavior. Male and female Troglolith will raise their young in very different ways. Male Troglolith are aggressive and keen on challenging Pokemon and other Troglolith to battles, while the female Troglolith like to gather berries and bond with other Pokemon species. Those Troglolith that used both techniques adapted better and survived longer. I also love how Rockapi's name comes from the lullaby Rockabye Baby. Very clever wordplay. For the ground type, we have some Pokemon that may look a bit familiar from the Helenos region on Instagram. Here are Cetadile and Alterodile. They are the ancestors to the Crocodile line and are based on the Caprosuchus, also named the Boar Crocodile. Alterodile's name comes from all-terrain, to refer to its title as the Land Croc Pokemon, and that it is a crocodile, which usually are more of a strong swimmer, but Alterodile also has a land advantage given its long legs, which can be used to sprint, and its rock and ground typing. A double entendre name. I love it. For the poison type, we have Elegoo and Tartusk by Subjectively here on YouTube. These two are based on mammoths and how they could be well preserved in tar pits, such as the La Brea tar pits. When scientists wanted to resurrect these Pokemon, they used a bit of fur that had been discovered in a tar pit. As such, when they were resurrected, their DNA spliced with that of the mineral composition of the tar, leading to these new forms. These two are giving me Jeff Goldblum in The Fly energy. But obviously, this means these forms are very different from how their ancestors looked and behaved, with Tartusk even having half its usual body mass replaced with tar. These Pokemon can take advantage of their new sticky forms and produce toxic fumes and sticky goo that can subdue even the strongest opponents. That last entry was pretty dark, so let's talk about the dark type. For this, we have Cubble and Mountiger from the Wesco region on Instagram, which we recently did a region review on, so check that out if you missed it. These Pokemon are both inspired by the ever-famous saber-toothed tiger. Ugh, my Power Rangers tingle is on full blast right now. Okay, I have to say it, saber-toothed tiger! Cubble is a very crafty little Pokemon that will pounce at any opportunity that presents them with food. Mountiger is a fairly aggressive Pokemon that was the apex predator of its time. Its stone headpiece acting as a demarcation of its pride and aggressiveness. The more scars on its headpiece, the more aggressive it is. This Pokemon line was thought to have existed closer to modern times than most fossil Pokemon. Finally, we have the Ghost type. To represent this, we will start with Sorotomb by Veluart over on Instagram. This little guy is inspired by the mighty Stegosaurus and tombstones. No, not the pizza.
Great, now I'm hungry. Rotom has the unnerving ability to drain the life force from Pokemon around it. It is heavily debated among scientists whether this is in fact its original form. Rotom evolves into Stegoleum, which goes from being inspired by tombstones to being inspired by the entire graveyard. Stegoleum can shoot the plates on its back like missiles. Studies suggest it might have been part grass type before the extinction of its species. Talk about a grim ending, am I right? Anyway, that's a fossil Pokemon for each type. Make sure to let me know which one was your favorite. And don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to keep up to date with future videos. Thanks so much for watching, and with that, I will see you guys next time. Oricorio, a Pokemon with the ability to change its form through the use of differently colored nectars, with each form having a unique type and dance style associated with it. So let's take a look at what an Oricorio of every type might look like. Hey everyone, Brandon here. Today we are taking a look at Oricorio. This dance-themed avian has been one of the more requested Pokemon for me to do an of every type video on. Oricorio's multiple types being associated with different dance styles really intrigued me. There are so many possibilities as to what dance style could be associated with what type. I made a lot of my own original Oricorios for this video, but there are some that I included from other artists because I just felt they made too much sense. With the existing forms of Oricorio being Fire, Electric, Psychic, and Ghost, that leaves 14 types for us to fill. And for this one, I will be doing the pure flying type, as it makes sense in this context. Anyway, let's get to it. Starting us off is the ground type. After giving your Oricorio an orange nectar, it becomes this form by Tubbs AZ. It's based on square dancing. The ground type being associated with a cowboy harkens back to the dusty deserts of the Old West, so this combo works really well together. Honestly, this form just makes way too much sense. If we ever get a Western US-based region, this absolutely needs to be real. This Oricorio causes minor seismic activity when it dances. It is one of the more rowdy forms of Oricorio, often trying to bring others in to dance with it. Next up, we have the fairy type. After giving your Oricorio a white nectar, it would become this form by Pokemachi. This form is based on ballet dancers and the famous ballet Swan Lake. The fairy type and ballet, could there be a better matchup? The artistry of ballet really evokes that elegance, sprightliness, and splendor of the fairy type. This form of Oricorio loves to dance around on the tips of its talons with grace, poise, and swiftness. It uses devastating pirouettes to dispatch its foes. For the fighting type, after giving your Oricorio a magenta nectar, you would get this form by Ruan Raphael Art. This form is based on funk dances, specifically the Boogaloo. Yes, this is Oricorio 2 Electric Boogaloo. Or should I say Fighting Boogaloo? The artist also said they were inspired by the music video Show das Ponderosas by the artist Anita. This form of Oricorio uses energetic dance moves to confuse its opponents. When the opponent lets their guard down, it will follow up with attacks such as high jump kick and wing attack. Honestly, the fighting type could work with many different dance styles, but I thought this funk form fit best. For the normal type, after giving your Oricorio a beige nectar, it would become this form by Fakemon SR. This form is based on the Samba dance style. These are the most common form of Oricorio, and most believe it to be its original form. These Oricorio will often reunite in groups where they dance in circles, spinning and singing, which has inspired people to make their own celebratory festival whenever these Pokemon reunite. If you've made it this far into the video, I'm sure you'd like the rest of the content on this channel, so make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to keep up to date with future videos. So from here on, all these Oricorio will be ones that I came up with. I worked with the incredible Fakemon SR to bring these to life, so let's get into them. First up, we have the Ice type. After giving Oricorio an Arctic Blue nectar, you would get this form of Oricorio. This form is based on the disco dance style. The reason why I picked disco for the Ice type is the song Do the Funky Penguin by Rufus Thomas and the dance move associated with it. As well as I kind of associate the disco ball with an igloo, both having that kind of rectangular pattern. I don't know, is that just me? Also, it is a bit of a stretch, but you can kind of fit ice into the word disco, like disco. Is that too big of a stretch? Its appearance is of course based on the iconic disco movie Saturday Night Fever, and John Travolta's character in it, Tony Manero. This Oricorio uses its super cool dance moves to freeze its opponents in their tracks. Get it? Super cool. Next, we have the Grass type. After giving Oricorio a green nectar, you would receive this form of Oricorio. This one is based on Irish step dancing. Commonly known depictions of this dance style are the River Dance and Lord of the Dance. The reason I chose this style for the Grass type is because of the association between the color green and Ireland.
with imagery such as leprechauns, shamrocks, the sprawling fields of lush grass that used to surround me, Goff. Sorry, I got a little lost in my Irish roots there. Anyway, as you can see, this Oricorio has the classic attire of an Irish step dancer, as well as the poofy hair and hands, or I guess wings, on its hips. This Oricorio can help plants grow by dancing before them. It is said that a team of this Oricorio once danced across an entire region and filled it with flora. For the bug type, after giving Oricorio a olive nectar, you would get this form of Oricorio. Okay guys, I'm actually really proud of the dance style behind this one. This form is based on, wait for it, the jitterbug. Clever, right? The jitterbug is a type of swing dancing that was popular in the late 1930s and early 1940s. The design of this form is based on the attire of swing dancers of that time. We also gave it these two little curly antenna-like feathers that are not only a way of displaying the bug typing, but are also a reference to the curly hairstyles that were popular in the 1930s. As I have said in the past, the bug typing is always hard to apply to non-bug Pokemon, but I am extremely proud of how this one came out, and the fact that I managed to slip a pun in there. This form of Oricorio likes to buzz around, energetically dancing from place to place with a look of ease and freedom. Next up, we have the water type. For this type, I wanted to do something very flowy with liquidy movements, so I decided to go with belly dancing. The hip movements, belly rolling, and movement of the fabric of the hip scarves used in this style of dance very much give off that vibe I was thinking of. So when you give your Oricorio a blue nectar, you get this form of Oricorio. I decided to feature the hip scarf prominently in this design because it wouldn't exactly be easy to show off the other aspects of belly dancing while using Oricorio as a base. This Oricorio uses its flowy movements to calm and enchant its foes into a subdued state. For the dark type, when you give Oricorio a black nectar, it becomes this form. This form of Oricorio is based on rave dancing, aka raving. It is also based on the famous meme of the cyber-goth dance party. I thought that the dark type would suit this very well, as goths are seen as a very dark, all-black kind of style, but cyber-goths mix in that pop of color, and I thought it would be a unique take on a dark type Oricorio. You can see the cybergoth and rave inspiration in its coloration. We gave it these bright feathers that kind of act like glow sticks. Also, we of course had to sneak in some devil horns in there, as dark type is the evil type in Japan. Also, we noticed this after completing it, but it's TikTok colored, so I guess there's another dance style in there for you. This form of Oricorio only comes out at night. It will use its brightly colored feathers to reflect the moonlight and stun their prey. Next up is the poison type. When giving Oricorio a violet nectar, and no, there is not a scarlet nectar, you will receive this form of Oricorio. It is based on punk dancing and mosh pits. The reason I picked this for the poison type rather than the dark type was I thought that the poison type could reflect the greens and purples that are often associated with the punk and even grunge styles. As you can see, this Oricorio has bright green mohawk-like feathers and is giving us the sign of the horns. I also added the inspiration of the pitohui in there. It is one of the only poisonous birds in the world due to a certain type of beetle in its diet. This form of Oricorio seems to move randomly with no real pattern. They will bash themselves into opponents, trying to rub off some of their toxic feathers up against them in hopes they'll get poisoned. For the rock type, once you give Oricorio a brown nectar, you would get this form of Oricorio. This form is based on the hip hop and pop dance styles, but specifically the pop and lock style. The locking part of this dance, for me, kind of evokes the poses you could see of statues. But the most fun part to me is if you put the word locking into katakana, you would get rocking. So I just had to do the rock type for this style. We gave it a little feather hat and these kind of loose overalls because we wanted to evoke that 90s style. I was also inspired by the video The Evolution of Hip Hop with Will Smith and Jimmy Fallon. This form of Oricorio will be dancing and then lock into one position, sometimes for hours. Some say this was developed as a defense mechanism against predators. Others think it's just trying to look cool. Next up is the pure flying type. When giving Oricorio a sky blue nectar, you would get this form of Oricorio. This form of Oricorio is inspired by aerial dancing, made famous by acts such as the Cirque du Soleil. This just had to be the pure flying type dance style. I mean, it's in the name, aerial dancing. While sort of obvious, I really do like how this form turned out. We tried to make the wings and tail emulate the aerial silks often used in this style of dance. It really gives off the flowing, effortless, gravity-defying feeling that aerial dancing does. It kind of gives you the question of, is this thing flying or is it just hovering using its tail? The world may never know. Oricorio in this form spend most of their time dancing in the air, only landing to rest or eat. Now for the steel type. When giving your Oricorio a Silver Nectar, you will receive this form. It is based on tap dancing. This was another one that just felt obvious to me. The style of this one was trying to replicate that old-timey top hat and cane, hello my baby, hello my honey, hello my ragtime gal type of performance. The whole grayscale coloration was meant to reference old black and white movie musicals that had these kinds of performances in them. We even gave it metal talons on its feet that it can tap with. The very definition of Metal Claw. This Oricorio form uses its metal talons to tap on the ground in specific patterns to attract mates. The more vigorous and complex the tapping, the more likely it is to find a partner. Giggity. Last but not least, we have the Dragon type. The Dragon type was very hard to pick for. I mean, when I think dragons and dances, I of course think the Pokémon move, the dancing dragon from Avatar: The Last Airbender, and the George R.R. Martin book. But what I ultimately decided on is a dance style that has a huge presence like a dragon would. A style that is currently taking over our world, K-pop. So after giving your Oricorio an Indigo Nectar, it would become this form of Oricorio. While also inspired by idols and idol groups found in Korea and Japan in general, I really drew inspiration from BTS on this one. Honestly, while I'm not a K-pop stan, I really do enjoy BTS's music, and they do have a massive presence around the world right now. We used the purple coloration and sharper fang and claw-like angles in the feathers to help evoke that dragon typing, while still trying to maintain that K-pop style with the head feathers, tail, and clothes. I'm actually very proud of how this one turned out, and for me it definitely fits the dragon type. This form of Oricorio uses a vicious yet subdued style of dance to intimidate its enemies, often leading to its opponents actually becoming infatuated with it. And that's an Oricorio of every type. Let me know what you think and which one was your favorite. In all honesty, this was probably my favorite one to do thus far, and really pushed me creatively, so I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Thanks so much for watching, and with that, I will see you guys next time. Pika clones. Cute little electric type rodents that are designed to replicate Pikachu. We have had one every single generation since Gen 3, or Gen 2 if you count Pichu. Since Gen 5 though, Pika clones have begun getting secondary types. Except Pommy, for some reason. So let's find out what a Pika clone of every type might look like. Hey everyone, Brandon here. So, Pika clones. Personally, I love them, especially Dedenne and Togedemaru. As I said in the intro, there are currently... get it? Currently? Anyway, half the Pika clones have a secondary type. Flying with Emolga, Fairy with Dedenne, Steel with Togedemaru, and Dark with Morpeko. And of course, pure electric type is covered by all the other Pika clones. That leaves 13 types for us to fill, so let's get to work. Let's begin with some Pika clones by my good friend Michael, aka Michael Ryan on YouTube and Fakemon Regions over on Instagram. Michael has made 2 Fakemon regions and thus 2 Pika clones. Starting us off is the Ice type, and for that we have Shakaru from Michael's Spherin region. This long boy is based on the Stoat. While the Stoat is not a rodent, it is a mustelid, which are fairly similar to rodents in appearance. There will be more mustelids and other animals similar to rodents for other Pika clones in this video, so just be prepared for that. Shakaru's ice-type inspiration can be pretty clearly seen from the Stoat's winter coat and general habitat. Its name comes from shoku and chiru. These words are an example of a Japanese concept called gairaigo, or loan word, where a foreign word will just be translated using katakana. For example, milk is miruku, so shoku is shock and chiru is chill. Didn't think you'd be getting a Japanese lesson when you opened this video, did you? Shakaru are often found burrowing in Spherin snowy tundra, and they will hunt at night by using electricity stored in their cheeks to find and stun their prey. Next is the Poison type. For this, we have Pikeboru from Michael's Liwika region. This spiky little dude is based on the Lowland Streaked Tenrek, and by God, do they look like a real-life Pika clone. This is one of those animals you just look at and think, yep, that was destined to be a Pokemon. The poison typing comes from its other inspiration of poison-tipped arrows, with Pikeboru able to shoot out its quills like said arrows. Pikeboru's name is another example of Gairaigo, in which it comes from Supaiki, meaning spiky, and Boruto, meaning bolt. Pikeboru stores electricity in its cheeks and poison in its quills, which make it particularly difficult to cuddle with. For the rock type, we have Sagald from Ada's Fakemon. That's a round little guy if I've ever seen one. Sagald is based on gold and the collared Pika,
also known as the rock rabbit. The gold part of its inspiration comes from the fact that gold is a great conductor of electricity. Its name comes from Naki Usagi, which is the Japanese word for Pika, Au, which is the symbol for gold on the periodic table of elements, and gold. Sagald are very elusive and hard to find, with them being on high alert due to their great hearing and vision. They will flee at the first sign of danger. Due to their appearance, they are easily mistaken for real gold. It is said that if you hit Sagald while mining, that you are cursed to find only fool's gold forevermore. Next up is the ground type. For this, we have Girasuna by Masissos region. It is based on ground squirrels and luchadors. Its name comes from Jirisu, which is ground squirrel in Japanese, and Suna, which means sand. Girasuna can communicate with others by sending energy into the earth with its tail, which it can also use as a means of digging. That's one handy tool. Or I guess I should say that's one handy tail. Get it? Because it's shaped like a hand? Haha. For the normal type, we have my own Pika clone from Cornera, Denkibi. It is based on field mice and speaker systems, playing into the whole idea of normal types having sound-based moves and designs like the X-Bloud line. Its name comes from Chibi and Denki. OMG, like Denki Karmanari from My Hero Academia? No, like Denki, as in the Japanese word for electricity or light. Where do you think he gets his name from? Looking at you, comment section. Denkibi can use its impressive ears to detect sounds from miles away. Now, for the water type, we have Ampibera by Costadex. Its name is a mixture of ampere, the base unit for an electrical current, and capybara, which is what it's inspired by. A capybara is a large semi-aquatic rodent native to South America. The semi-aquatic nature of this rodent is what inspired Ampibara's water typing. Ampibara can turn the force of a river current into electrical energy that it stores in its cheeks. Most of the time, you can just find them lounging around and swimming peacefully. For the grass type, we have Hadashiku from Oppo Fakemon. Hadashiku is based on voles and gramineae plants, which is the family that includes wheat. Hadashiku creates pollen from its tail that can cause you to sneeze, but also causes little electric shocks. It is actually allergic to its own pollen, so it makes itself sneeze and spreads the pollen around even more. Hadashiku's name comes from Hatanezumi, meaning vole, and shiku-shiku, the Japanese onomatopoeia for sneezing. Next is the fire type, and representing this is Quokenki from Fakemans. Quokenki is based on the quokka, which is a marsupial found off the coast of Western Australia. They are incredibly photogenic, and they aren't really scared of humans, so people love taking selfies with them. Quokenki's name comes from quokka, duh, and Denki. OMG, like Denki coming up! While Quokenki's cheeks store electricity, the pouch on its belly stores sunlight and turns it into energy, making it incredibly happy and pleasant to be around. If you've made it this far into the video, chances are you like what you're watching, so make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to help support this channel and keep up to date with future videos. For the next two, we have a couple by Tubbs AZ. First, for the psychic type, we have Mogurai. Its name comes from Harimogura and Rai. Harimogura is the Japanese word for echidna, which serves as Mogurai's main inspiration. Its secondary inspiration is electric receptors. Mogurai has poor eyesight, so it uses its highly receptive nose and quills to detect even the slightest movement. It can also use its quills to deliver powerful shocks when threatened. The basis of Mogurai's psychic typing is its extrasensory perception of things. Next up is the ghost type, and be prepared to be a bit spooked by this one, guys, because here is Chumera. Chumera is a hodgepodge of all the Pika clones stitched together. It has the tail of Pachirisu, the face and ears of Dedenne, the cheek pouch of Minun, and the ear of Plusle and Minun stitched together, the chest of Morpeko, the wings of Emolga, and the belly and feet of Togedemaru. No one knows how it came to be or where it came from, only that it's as rare as it is terrifying. For the bug type, we have Marmota by An Artist Astray. It is based on the Himalayan marmot. But Brandon, I hear you say, what does a marmot have to do with bugs? Well, my fine uninformed friend, way back in 430 BC, the Greek historian and geographer Herodotus wrote in his book Histories of a particular creature called the gold-digging ant that lives around the Himalayas. Herodotus described them as fox-sized furry ants that would dig up gold dust while creating their mounds and tunnels. Skip forward to 1964, and French explorer Michel Payssel discovers that the Himalayan marmot found in the Deosai Plateau may have been what Herodotus was referring to, as the marmots dig their burrows in the plateau's soil, which is rich in gold dust. So there you have it, a marmot mixed with an ant based on an eons-old myth. Marmota's name comes from the genus Marmota and Myrmikis, which means ant in Greek, playing into the myth's Greek origins. Also, you could squeeze Mata in there, as in the Japanese Osaka dialect, it means done by mistake, just like how Herodotus was mistaken about the gold-digging ants. Marmota live in colonies underground and can use their antennae to find buried treasures such as precious minerals and gold.
Next up, we have one that was a bit of a challenge to create, the Dragon type. For this, we have Kirigao. Kirigao is based on the Mighty Mongoose and the Ramidrehu. The Ramidrehu is of Cantabrian myth and is a green weasel-like creature with the snout and tusks of a boar. They have a long, snake-like body and a strong desire for gold. What else can have a slender, snake-like body and love gold? Dragons! The reason I picked the mongoose as an additional inspiration is that some species of mongoose are very similar to weasels. But also, mongoose are famous for fighting snakes. Many dragons are snake-like, and dragon is weak against dragon, so it made sense to me. Kirigo is often found in old abandoned castles or deep in caves, hoarding mounds of shiny treasures. It is said that if you can find and catch one, you will earn its fortune. Kirigo's name comes from kira kira, the Japanese onomatopoeia for sparkling, like Kirigo's sparkling treasure, rai meaning thunder, and gao, which is the onomatopoeia for roaring. Last but certainly not least, for the fighting type, we have none other than Gerbolt from True Green 7's Asone region. Gerbolt is based on the Jerboa and superheroes. A Jerboa is a desert rodent found in North Africa and the Middle East with long legs that it can use to move around similar to a kangaroo, and has these adorable giant ears and cute button eyes. Perfect for a Pika clone. Gerbolt doesn't just look like a superhero, but acts like one as well. It will do its best to save others and fight evildoers, though it's all in an effort to become more popular. Gerbolt loves the attention and waits until it can make a perfect grand entrance, even sometimes to the detriment of those it's trying to save. It can jump 100 feet in the air and use its cape-like fur to slow its fall. It can also use its tail like a grappling hook. If it wasn't obvious, its name comes from Jerboa and Bolt. And that's a Pika clone of every type. Let me know what you think and which one was your favorite. If you liked the video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to help support this channel and keep up to date with future videos. A huge thank you to all the amazing creators that let me show off their work. Make sure to check them out in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching, and with that, I will see you guys next time. This adorable little meme icon recently got a poison type regional variant. So let's see what a Wooper of every type might look like. Hey everyone, Brandon here. So on August 3rd, 2022, the internet was introduced to the incredible Paldean Wooper. And on that day, everything changed. So that led me to creating 16 more Woopers to fill the remaining types. We have Water Ground with the original Wooper, and then Poison Ground with Paldean Wooper, so all these Woopers will have the secondary ground typing as well. I worked with these two incredible artists to bring these variants to life, so make sure to check them out in the description. Now let's get to some Woopers, shall we? Starting us off is the Fairy type. One very specific Wooper came to mind when I thought of a Fairy type Wooper, the special heart-marked Wooper owned by Alicia in the anime. Hearts and love are great aspects that could be incorporated into a Fairy type, so I dug a little deeper for inspirations and found the Leucistic Axolotl. It is light and dark pink in coloration, which ties perfectly into the hearts and love theme I had in mind. So put them together and you get this Wooper. Like Paldean Wooper, I tried to make it so the same 4 things changed on each of these variants. The color, its mouth shape, the pattern on its chest/stomach, and Wooper's gills. Yes, those things on the side of the heads of axolotls and larval salamanders are actually external gills, which are what the little protrusions on Wooper's head are meant to emulate. Anyway, the gills and pattern on the chest have been changed to love hearts, not biological hearts, because that would be really terrifying. I imagine the heart Wooper Alicia owned was an ancestor to this Wooper and was essentially the first to develop the heart gene. This Wooper developed the fairy typing through domestication. Domesticated Wooper with the heart gene became a highly desirable commodity. So more Wooper were bred to have it, which eventually led to other parts of its biology changing, such as its gills and type. If the colors of the hearts on this Wooper's head and chest are brighter, it means it's very happy and feels loved. But if not, the hearts will begin to turn dark purple and can even break. Next up, we have the fighting type. This one was a bit tough, because how do you make a fighting type that has no arms? Literally every fighting type has arms of some kind. I mean, Wooper having no arms didn't stop Game Freak from letting it learn Ice Punch, so I wasn't gonna let this stop me. But then I came across this fantastic artwork by Utagawa Kuniyoshi called Samurai Fighting Giant Salamander. This ukiyo-e style painting inspired me and made me think, why not just mix them? Which led to the creation of this Wooper. The gills of this Wooper are meant to emulate a samurai's helmet, specifically the fukugaeshi and the shikoro, which protect the face and the head of the samurai. The pattern on its chest is meant to replicate the cuirass or do of a samurai armor, which typically have some sort of lined pattern on the chest. This Wooper has a strong sense of justice and courage. It will defend itself and others without wavering.
It always acts with honor, honesty, and politeness to every Pokemon it meets. Trainers who use this Pokemon are said to be as powerful as they are loyal. Next is the normal type. So here we have this Wooper. Does it look familiar? It should. This Wooper is an ancient ancestor to both Wooper and Chansey. My buddy Alex suggested this and I loved the idea, so I rolled with it. Chansey's ears or gills have always seemed like an odd feature for it to have, especially when compared to Happiny and Blissey, so this variant gives an explanation. Obviously, the gills are meant to reflect Chansey's gills, but also the pattern on its stomach emulates the Chansey line's egg pouches. This Pokemon was lost to the ages long ago, but its ancestors Wooper and Chansey still live on, carrying on its legacy. It is said that if you rub the pattern on its stomach, good luck and happiness will be brought to you. Now for the ghost type. As always, this one's going to get a bit spooky. Actually, though, this one is based on some things that are a bit creepy. Axolotls are frequently experimented on due to their incredible regenerative abilities. They can regenerate limbs, bones, or even portions of their brain. So here is our ghost type Wooper. Its gills are now a ghostly miasma, which are a reference to the axolotl's limbs being experimentally removed, but also phantom limbs. The feeling that some amputees can have where they get the sensation that their missing limb is still there. The pattern on its chest, like Paldean Wooper, is meant to emulate a rib cage, but unlike Paldean Wooper, it is more so meant to look like the ribs of a decaying zombie. This Wooper is the result of experimentation by Pokemon scientists, who are looking to discover the secrets of infinity energy. It is seen skulking around abandoned laboratories, trying to exact revenge on the scientists who made it this way. Moving on, we have the psychic type. When looking at salamanders and axolotls for this video, I managed to come across the lavender axolotl, which just felt perfect for a psychic type. I also wanted to incorporate some aspects of divination and fortune telling, so here is this Wooper. Rather than a pattern on its stomach, it has gained a third all-seeing eye, which in many religions and popular media gives one clairvoyance, precognition, or enlightenment. Its feathery gills covering its eyes refers to the claim that individuals who have lost one of their senses, such as blindness or deafness, have their other senses heightened. Also, the idea of not using your eyes to see, but opening your third eye to see the truth. It is also a reference to headscarves worn by the Romani or Roma people, who are known to practice divination and fortune telling. This Pokemon only sees using its third eye, which it uses to see all around it and feel Pokemon's auras. It is not known if it even has eyes underneath its gills, or if it just covers them out of instinct. Now for the dark type. For this, I wanted to go in less of an evil direction, because how could this adorable face be evil? So instead, I opted to go in more of an Umbreon direction and reference the moon and nighttime. Right after deciding that, I found out about the speckled black salamander. The pattern on its skin reminded me of a night sky and stars, so it matched up perfectly. So with all that in mind, here is our dark type Wooper. Its gills are crescent moons, and the pattern on its stomach and tail are stars. This Wooper has adapted to only coming out at night. Its moon-shaped gills can glow in the dark, drawing in bug-type Pokemon for it to eat. Speaking of eating bug-type Pokemon, let's talk about this bug-type Wooper. This one is pretty simple. It's kind of a you are what you eat kind of thing, where this Wooper ate so many bug-type Pokemon that it became one itself over time. And I mean, if a Alolan Raichu can eat so many fluffy pancakes that it gains the psychic typing, this Wooper can do the same thing with bugs. Its design is mostly inspired by the mole cricket, but also its mouth is like Trapinch, a ground type based on a ground-dwelling bug. The gills are meant to look like antennae, and the little nubs on the chest and stomach are meant to reflect a pattern on the back of the mole cricket's abdomen. This Wooper likes to pester other Pokemon by burrowing underground so it can't be found, and then proceeds to make very loud noises. It gets great joy from feeling the vibrations of other Pokemon trying to look for it to no avail. For the rock type, we have this Wooper. Okay, I'm kind of proud of the pun here. This one is based on the marbled salamander, but it's literally a marble salamander. Its gills refer to the curly hair used in many marble sculptures, such as David or Venus de Milo, which I found especially funny given Venus de Milo doesn't have arms, and neither does Wooper. The capital I-shaped pattern on its stomach is based on Ionic columns found in Greek architecture, in which these kind of marble statues can be seen resting upon. And many Greek gods and heroes are the basis of these statues, which tie in with the Ionic columns' Greek origins. This Pokemon likes to pose dynamically to intimidate other Pokemon from attacking it. It is fairly fragile, so this is its best form of defense. Next up is the flying type. So here is this Wooper. As you can no doubt tell, this one is a bit out there, but let me explain. This Wooper is based on the wandering salamander. These little daredevils like to sometimes skydive from redwood trees in Northern California. You know, some of the tallest trees on the planet. They can stretch their feet and tail to help them glide to the ground safely. This was such a wild phenomenon, I had to feature it. So that brings us to this Wooper. These parachute-like gills can actually be stored in the little white pouches on the side of Wooper's face, like an airbag. This artwork is just illustrating what they look like in action. The symbol on its stomach should be pretty recognizable, as it's the symbol found on landing pads, usually for helicopters, which people can skydive from if they're real thrill seekers. This Pokemon likes to climb up high into mountains or buildings, and then jumps from them so it can use its gills to glide high in the sky. Now for the electric type. Here it is. Since this Wooper is an electric ground type, I thought, hey, why not reference electrical grounds? So the symbol on its chest is the icon for electrical grounds. The gills not only look like lightning bolts, but also reference the wires used to connect to an electrical ground. This Pokemon does something that no human should do, and uses its little fangs to bite into electrical wiring. Due to its typing, it can not only withstand the shock, but uses it to fuel itself. Like a little supercharged snack. If it gets caught snacking, it will bury itself in the ground to hide. While we're on the topic of the ground, let's talk about the pure ground type. I had a couple inspirations for this one, but primarily the Hellbender Salamander. This big guy is really good at camouflaging with the riverbed. Weirdly, that made me think of that one scene in Rambo 2 where he covers himself in mud to camouflage himself. So I kind of combined those ideas into this Wooper. I really wanted to avoid coming off as similar to Paldean Wooper since it's so brown and ground type looking already, so I used the more riverbed color of the Hellbender and covered it in a muddy camouflage-like pattern. The gills are just meant to look muddy as well, but they also kind of look like Sylvester Stallone's wavy hair covered in mud. Kinda. Look, I know it's a stretch, okay? This Wooper buries itself in the mud to hide from predators, but also to wait for prey to pass by so it can get a close-range strike. For the grass type, I found out a very interesting fact about the spotted salamander, which is just wild. It turns out when the spotted salamander lays its eggs, a photosynthetic algae called Euphylla amblystomatis grows on the eggs and shares a symbiotic relationship with them, eating the nitrogen waste the eggs create and then providing extra oxygenated water for the eggs. If you think that's cool, it gets even crazier. It was initially thought that the symbiotic relationship ended when these eggs hatched, but it has been discovered that the algae can be found in the cells of the salamander itself, making it the world's only known photosynthesizing vertebrate, which is absolutely insane. So here is our grass type Wooper that references this. The green spots on its chest reflect the spots of the salamander it is inspired by, but also the shape of the spots refers to the pattern on Pokéeggs, which connects back to the salamander's eggs relationship with the algae. Its gills are just meant to look like leafy appendages to further the idea of its grass typing. This Pokemon uses the special spots on its stomach to take in energy. It will also plant itself in the ground to rest, in which farmers will often mistake it for a crop and pull it up, awakening and angering this Pokemon. Next up is the ice type. For this, we have yet another wacky salamander that it's based on, the Siberian salamander. Like the well-known wood frog, this salamander can survive deep freezes, sometimes remaining frozen for months. But once it thaws, it can walk off like nothing happened. They are able to do this because they can somehow replace their blood with the chemicals of antifreeze. What? And I thought the last one was crazy. Anyway, here is our ice type Wooper. Its gills are now icicles, and the pattern on its stomach references ice cube trays. The coloration plays off of the Siberian salamander, but it also has a pretty gnarly inspiration that I won't show on screen. But it refers to severe frostbite and how the skin can turn black. Look that up at your own peril. I will not be held responsible. It is said that this Wooper came about when a group of them was forced from their home and pushed north to a harsh, wintry land that it had to adapt to. Now for steel. I won't lie, I probably had the most trouble coming up with this one, until I found out about something in metallurgy also called a salamander. It is a mass of solidified iron removed from a blast furnace to prevent it from blocking the tap hole. The kind of iron that blast furnaces are typically used for is called pig iron, which is smelted to make steel. So here is our steel type Wooper. The symbol on its stomach is a pig snout to reference the pig iron it is based on, and the gills are based on steel reinforcing bars, which are mainly used in construction. You can see them sticking out of concrete once it's been broken. This Wooper is known for its distinct ability to withstand heat. It loves to drink molten iron and even take baths in it. Speaking of heat, it's time for the fire type. This is another pretty simple one. I went with the mythological creature of the salamander, which in many depictions is a fire elemental of sorts. So here is our fire type Wooper. It has fiery gills and a fire pattern on its stomach, which is actually a pun and refers to the fire belly salamander. You could really say that this salamander has a fire in its belly. This Pokemon soaks up the intense heat of volcanoes and is even said to breathe fire. Fire breathing, kind of like a dragon. Oh yeah, let's talk about the dragon type. So for this, I went in a similar vein to the Dragon Oricorio in that of every type video, where the dragon typing is displayed through a large looming presence. Well, what has a large presence? How about a king or an emperor? Well, there is the Emperor Newt, but this little guy doesn't really have a big presence. What if we mixed it with a bigger salamander? No, how about the biggest salamander? And the biggest of them all is the Chinese giant salamander. So put all these concepts together and we get this Wooper. As you can see, it is a bit more busy design-wise than the others, but that is because it is the King Wooper. And it is huge, even bigger than a Quagsire. It is partly inspired by King Bob-omb from the Super Mario franchise. It has its crown and even its royal attire. The pattern on its chest references the toxic bulbs of the Emperor Newt, but also looks like the military uniforms worn by royalty. Its relationship to other Woopers, I imagine, is like the Alpha Dragon in How to Train Your Dragon, where no matter the species, this King Wooper commands them all. Let me know which of these Woopers was your favorite. Thanks for watching, and with that, I will see you guys next time. With the introduction of Wiglet in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, we technically have two differently typed Diglett forms in the franchise. So let's see what a Diglett and Dugtrio of every type might look like. Hey everyone, Brandon here. With all these Diglett and Diglett adjacent Pokemon coming out in recent generations, it got me thinking about a bunch of potential Diglett forms or even convergent Pokemon like Wiglet. But this was on my mind even before we were introduced to Wiglet, after I saw this supposed leak of a water-ground Diglett form based around geysers. And I'm sure you saw it circulating around as well. As it turns out, this leak and a few others were made by the talented Pokétor. So I partnered with them to make a bunch of new Diglett and Dugtrio forms. So starting us off is the fighting type. Diglett and Dugtrio are both based on the classic Whack-A-Mole arcade game. Their dex entries say they're a very great resource on farms because when they dig through the fields, the soil is perfectly tilled. But what if in another region, Diglett and Dugtrio were pests that just ate the crops on the farms and needed to be whacked to scare them off? Well, in comes these fighting type forms of Diglett and Dugtrio. Just kidding, here are the actual ones. They've been whacked one too many times, so now they are some angy little guys. In this region, they are highly aggressive crop munchers, and given their history of being whacked, they don't trust humans, especially farmers. If they see a farmer, it's like the dog with the mailman. They will chase that farmer to the ends of the earth, even if that farmer has never whacked them before. Their fighting type not only comes through in their aggressive nature, but also in that they have to fight to survive in this region. Due to the fact there isn't a regular abundance of the plant roots they were used to munching on in Kanto, so they have to eat the farmer's crops to survive, which they risk being whacked for. Next up is the electric type. For this, we have a convergent Pokemon called Outlet. It's based on lightning rods and the buildings that hold them. At the moment of making this video, Wiglet is the only convergent Pokemon we know about, and we don't even know how it evolves, so if these Pokemon break the rules of what a convergent Pokemon is, try to cut us some slack. Anyway, Outlet uses the electricity it gathers from its head to fuel itself. It usually likes to stay in one place, but when it moves, it tends to move in quick bursts. At level 26, Outlet evolves into Outlot. Unlike Diglett, Outlet doesn't evolve into 3 of itself and goes a more traditional Pokemon evolution route, becoming a bigger and more advanced version of its previous form. I decided to use the lot suffix in place of the trio because this Pokemon has a whole lot more to it than its previous form. Outlot expands upon the design elements of Outlet and adds these little lightning rods beside it that can be used to disperse extra powerful lightning strikes. Outlot tend to hang out in very high places, especially during thunderstorms. The energy they receive from these storms can sustain them for months. Next, we have some Ice and Ghost forms by Meowth. For Ice, we have Talassian Diglett and Dugtrio. Like the Alolan forms, these Diglett and Dugtrio have hair, but instead of on the head, they have beards! I cannot even begin to describe how happy these two make me. Talassian Diglett grew their beards to help regulate their temperature in the cold caves of northern Talassia. Whichever Diglett has the biggest beard is allowed to evolve and lead the group. When evolved, Talassian Dugtrio are extremely territorial and will fight to defend their home or even conquer new caves. Their beardedness and their territorial and conquering nature is a reference to Vikings. For Ghost, we have some more convergent Pokemon with Spooklet and Spooktrio. They're based on sheet ghosts. For this design, Meowth played into the fact that many people thought Diglett's nose was a mouth with one little tooth. So the noses are meant to look more like open, shrieking mouths, like the Scream by Edvard Munch. If you've made it this far into the video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to keep up to date with future videos just like this one. Back to Pokétoronized designs. Next, we have the Fairy type. For this, we took inspiration from the Star-Nosed Mole, who is kind of a freaky-looking little guy. So here is a freaky-looking little Fairy type Diglett that we made to match. Its nose is above its eyes and shaped like a hand. I promise this will make sense shortly. It evolves at level 26 into this Dugtrio. Do you get it now? It's a little priest/pope Dugtrio doing the praise hands. The fairy typing comes in with the holiness of those professions. Holy things are typically attributed with light in JRPGs and are a counter to dark things, just like the fairy type. These Diglett and Dugtrio are believed to have been blessed by Arceus itself, and try to share the light of Arceus with every Pokemon they meet. For the bug type, Pokétor had the idea of switching the inspiration from the ground-dwelling mole to the ground-dwelling worm. So here is Buglet and Buglot. I know earthworms are not actually bugs, but they're bug adjacent and the concept fits really well. Also, Buglot adds in the inspiration of these sandworms from Dune. Unlike Diglett and Dugtrio, Buglet and Buglot eat the soil they plow through. Buglot will also eat anything in its path that is smaller than it, so watch out. Onto the poison type. For this, Pokétor had the idea of changing the kind of mole that Diglett is based on, but not in the way you think. With that said, let's meet our poison type Diglett and Dugtrio. Instead of being based on the animal mole, they are instead based on a skin mole, specifically the cancerous kind like melanoma. These two infect the earth around them, causing a blight on the soil, making it inhospitable to any form of life. It is highly recommended to not interact with these Pokemon and avoid them at all costs. It is said that even if you manage to catch it, the Pokeball itself will rot and release them. Now for the rock type, we have Rocklet. It is based on mountains, but also those giant Diglett statues found in Galar. Rocklet are very slow moving and tend to stay in one place for long periods of time. If they stay long enough in one place, they will start to grow and their biology will begin to incorporate with the land around it. Rocklet evolves into Rockwad. Rockwad adds in the additional inspiration of Mount Rushmore, found near Keystone, South Dakota. Rockwad is so goofy and I just love it. Rockwad used to be rare to find, but with modern technology, it has become much easier to track them down. Next up is the flying type. This one is a pretty simple idea, but super cute nonetheless. So here is the flying type Diglett and Dugtrio. They're floating on little clouds Lakitu style. Dugtrio even has the little crown of the sun as an actual crown, looking like the sun peeking over the clouds. These Pokemon move unlike any other flying type Pokemon. There is seemingly no pattern to their movement and can freely fly in any direction. Flying makes them very happy, but if they're made sad or angry, their colors will darken and they will create fierce gusts of wind. For the normal type, Pokétor and I agreed that there is nothing more normal than an actual mole. So here is normal Diglett and Duglot. Oh my god, it has appendages! The natural order is falling apart! In all seriousness though, Duglot is made to look more like real moles. But both Diglett and its coloration are taken from the golden mole, which actually isn't a true mole. They're the result of a real-life convergent evolution. It's a fun little twist on this video idea where the regional variant and evolution is actually based on the real-life convergent animal instead of vice versa. These two spend most of their time relaxing in deserts. Their bodies and fur are well suited for the heat the day brings and the cool of the night. Onto the grass type. What kind of plant life sticks just barely out of the dirt and is round like Diglett? Oh yeah, potatoes! So here is Spudlet and Spudtrio. Potatoes, one of the best and most versatile vegetables in cooking and now in Fakemon too. For Spudtrio, we used a mix of potato types, russet, golden, and sweet potatoes. Spudlet and Spudtrio not only till the soil they move through, but also enrich it as well, making them the perfect companion for farmers. Next, for the psychic type, Pokétor had the idea of a Diglett popping out of a hat like a magician's rabbit. So here is Rablet and Rabduo. Rablet love carrots. They will travel great distances just to eat them, which actually isn't too difficult for them given that the magic hats they reside in can help them float to said carrots. Rabduo, while still a carrot lover, is more frequently found at magic shows being used to amaze and entertain children. For the fire type, we have Maglet and Magtrio. They are based on erupting volcanoes. Maglet are rare Pokemon, though they used to be much more common in ancient times. When they erupt, the temperature rises, even at distances up to 60 feet away. Magtrio surround themselves in hot magma to deter predators. Ancient cave writing seemingly tells the story of a giant Magtrio erupting, with its ash blocking out the sun and laying waste to the towns below. Next up, here are the dark forms of Diglett and Duglot. And just like the poison type, we changed the kind of mold that these two are based on. They're based on spies, specifically double agents, aka moles. Their designs take heavy inspiration from Sam Fisher from the Splinter Cell series, and even Speckles from the critically acclaimed Disney movie G-Force. These Diglett and Dugtrio are masters of espionage. They can silently pop in and out of the ground, walls, and even ceilings. For the dragon type, Poketor and I both thought a great inspiration would be the Hydra given Dugtrio's multi-headedness. So here is Diglett and Dugtrio. You can see instead of the usual dirt mound that Diglett and Dugtrio have surrounding them, it is instead a pile of gold to reference the Greek origins of dragons. In Greek, they're called Drakon, which means the Watcher, as apparently they were made by the gods to watch over their treasure. Diglett and Dugtrio will both keep their mound of gold with them wherever they go. If even a single piece of gold is misplaced, they will become enraged. It is said an enraged Dugtrio once terrorized a village, until a mighty trainer with many fire-type Pokemon came and bested it. And that's a Diglett and Dugtrio of every type. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Burmy has 3 different cloaks that change the secondary type of their evolution, Wormadam. So let's see what a Burmy and Wormadam of every type might look like. Hey everyone, Brandon here. And yes, it's finally here. A Burmy and Wormadam of every type has been requested a ton, so I'm excited to share it with you all. I just want to doubly clarify that I am aware that Burmy does not change type with the different cloaks, so technically this isn't a Burmy of every type, but you get the idea. The lovely Fungus Fakemon made all of these forms, so make sure to go check them out. So without further ado, let's begin with probably the most obvious type in this video, the Bug type. For this, we have Burmy and Wormadam no cloak form. These designs remind me of those pictures where they make the Pokemon naked. Just some real cursed stuff. Anyway, like I said, this one just felt obvious. Burmy's cloakless form has been seen in the anime and even had its own official artwork that was on the Pokemon website. For this video, we just posed it in the same way as other Burmy forms for consistency's sake. We didn't know what Wormadam would look like naked, so this is our best guess. This cloakless form of Burmy is rare to see, but what is even more rare is to see a cloakless Wormadam. The only way a cloakless Burmy can evolve into this form of Wormadam is if something has gone terribly, terribly wrong. Next, we have the poison type. For this, we have Burmy and Wormadam sludge cloak form. We definitely wanted to evoke a Grimer or Muck feeling with this design. Sad pictures incoming, but these two are a reference to oil spills or toxic waste dumping and the animals that are affected by it. This coat for Burmy is usually seen around big cities that have a lot of toxic waste. It seems when it evolves into Wormadam, it gains a sickness that can't be shaken. For the fighting type, we have Burmy and Wormadam punch cloak form. They just had to be punching bags. Their designs and concepts perfectly meld together with a punching bag, so much so that it was too good an opportunity to pass up. Both Burmy and Wormadam are based on bagworms, so this is literally a bag worm. Fungus added these little scuffs and dings to Burmy's face to add to this punching bag idea, which I love. Wormadam gained these appendages when evolving, so it made for a great opportunity to do a zero to hero narrative throughout the design. The weak kid that gets beat up and then comes back to beat his bullies, like Karate Kid. Burmy will enter into these bags because they're soft, comfortable, and padded, which provides great protection. But they seem to attract a lot of attention from other Pokemon and trainers who are looking to train up their effort values. When Burmy has reached its limit, they will evolve into Wormadam and start to fight back. Now for the normal type, we have Burmy and Wormadam bed cloak form. They are both in sleeping bags, with Wormadam's design adding in a little quilted poncho look. Guys, they are literally bed bugs. I mean, come on, how great is that? The concept of sleeping is a very standard thing, given we spend 1/3 of our lives doing it, and apparently Game Freak tends to agree with Pokemon like Snorlax, Slackoth, and Komala, who are all normal types that are known for sleeping. These Burmy and Wormadam are the coziest of any other cloak form. They will spend all day sleeping and only wake up to eat or if they sense danger. Next up is the fairy type. For this, we have Burmy and Wormadam party cloak form. It's party time! Viva Pinata! Filled with fun! Filled with fun! Esoteric kids shows / Xbox 360 games aside, these are of course based on piñatas, which are filled with sweets and are usually seen at parties, which totally fits the theming of a fairy type. This form of Burmy attaches thin strips of paper to itself to form this festive looking cloak. Like the punch cloak Burmy and Wormadam, they both tend to attract a lot of unwanted attention due to their vibrant coloration. If you've made it this far into the video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to support this channel and keep up to date with future videos. On to the psychic type. For this, we have Burmy and Wormadam art cloak form. The psychic typing comes through in the expression of art, how we can see a brief glimpse into the mind of an artist through their work, and how we perceive that art in our minds. Wormadam also has this wacky mustache and unibrow, which gives off a psychedelic art feeling. The paper cloak they both have refers to the multiple ways paper is used in art, as a canvas, paper mache, and origami. These Burmy and Wormadam use berries to paint their cloaks. The paintings they create can warp the mind of the viewer, making them feel confused or sleepy. Next up is the flying type. For this, we have Burmy and Wormadam nest cloak form. Bagworms and birds both gather a variety of materials to build their structures, so it makes complete sense for the flying type, which was almost the bird type at one point, to be represented through a nest. An additional detail that Foongoose added and I loved is that Wormadam's head and arms come together to look like a baby bird that just hatched. This form of Burmy is less particular about what it grabs to make its cloak, grabbing a mixture of items including feathers, fur, sticks, and grass. Once evolved into Wormadam, miraculously, it can fly short distances to avoid predators. Now onto the rock type. A running theme in these of every type videos is the difficulty of separating ground and rock type designs, and this video is no exception. Especially with the sand cloak already having rocks in its design. Make up your mind, Game Freak. Are rocks a part of the ground type or not? Runerigus is literally a stone slab. Camerupt has rocky mountains on its back, but both are ground type. What are we doing here? Sorry about that. I guess I had some pent-up design frustration there. Anyway, here is Burmy and Wormadam gem cloak form. They are gems and crystals, because those are usually associated with the rock type. Except for Mega Steelix! Sorry, let that slip again. Anyway, Wormadam also look like a crystal chandelier, which is a fun design detail Foongoose added. These Burmy typically seclude themselves to caves, where the loose rock and crystals are their only resource to build a cloak with. These Wormadam are considered to be a natural wonder, as their crystals shimmer against any amount of light the cave receives in a beautiful fashion. For the electric type, we have Burmy and Wormadam wool cloak form. Not only is wool associated with the electric type in the Pokemon world, but ours as well, with wool being a highly conductive material, which anyone who's worn a wool sweater and then tried to touch someone can probably attest to this. Also, part of Wormadam's arms look like little light bulbs. These Burmy typically hang out on farms where Mareep and Wooloo are found. Since they stay so still already, the paralysis effect that Mareep's fur can have doesn't really disrupt their way of living. The Wormadam have become one with the fur, building an immunity to the paralysis and even giving out its own shocking effect when touched. Next up is the water type. For this, we have Burmy and Wormadam shell cloak form. All kinds of sea life call shells their home, so why can't Burmy and Wormadam do the same? Wormadam adds in elements of aquatic plant life and different shell shapes to give off an almost mermaid-esque appearance, which, given all Wormadam are female, ends up working out really well. Burmy in this cloak hang from trees and caves that are close to beaches. They often have to fight other Pokemon for the shells they inhabit. When evolving, this Wormadam gains the ability to swim and hold its breath underwater for long periods of time. For the ice type, we have what feels like another obvious choice with Burmy and Wormadam's Snowcloak form. What is less obvious, however, is how it is executed. While of course meant to emulate snowballs and snowmen, they also have elements of winter clothing incorporated into their design. I really love the braids on Wormadam's head. It reminds me of how I am now learning to braid my daughter's hair. Most think that Burmy and Wormadam in this form must be freezing, but the way the snow is built around their bodies provides an insulation that traps their natural body heat. Now for the dragon type, we have Burmy and Wormadam Scale Cloak form. These are probably some of the most out there Pokemon I have ever made for this channel, but I love them. Somehow the dragon typing feels natural on Burmy. Foongoose added this little tooth on its mouth, which really brings it all together. They both remind me of mid-stage pseudo-legendary Pokemon like Shelgon and Pupitar. Wormadam's little teeth coming out of its cloak make it feel like a little bundled up monster and evokes a where the wild things are kind of feeling. This form of Burmy picks up the leftover scales that many dragon-type Pokemon shed near where it inhabits. The infinity energy of evolution fuses with the draconic energy of the scales to create this monstrous Wormadam. Onto the ghost type. Before I came up with a punching bag for the fighting type, I had thought to wrap Burmy in bandages like a boxer's fists, but then I realized that's just a mummy. So here is Burmy and Wormadam mummy form. Rather than just being wrapped in bandages, Foongoose took it a step further and made the little twig-like protrusions on Burmy look like the crook and flail of an Egyptian sarcophagus. And Wormadam has a bit of a sarcophagus peeking out underneath its bandages. These Burmy and Wormadam have been possessed by a Cofagrigus. They used them to spread their mummy ability to Pokemon who think Burmy and Wormadam will be easy prey. Next up is the Dark type. For this, we have Burmy and Wormadam Shade Cloak form. These designs take inspiration from famous edgelords like Shadow the Hedgehog, Vincent from Final Fantasy VII, Sasuke and Itachi from Naruto, Reaper from Overwatch, and even the edgelord Pokemon itself, Darkrai. It also takes inspiration from the Reaper Cloth item, which evolves Dusclops into Dusknoir. You can really see the Reaper side of things in Wormadam with its two scythe-like appendages. These Pokemon use their darkly shrouded appearance to hide from potential predators. Not because they're scared, but to execute a sneak attack. The sharp appendages on Wormadam can slice through the rough skin of a Drudagon. Now for the fire type, we have Burmy and Wormadam Coal Cloak form. I know this verges on being a rock type, but I really didn't want to cloak these Pokemon in straight up flames because the cloak has to make sense for the Burmy to want to wear. Burmy, in an attempt to warm itself as much as it can, has wrapped itself in burning hot coals, which mysteriously don't damage it as a fire or rock type would. Wormadam has adapted to the heat and can withstand hanging inside an active volcano. And that's a Burmy and Wormadam of every type. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. What if there was a dog Pokemon of every type? Let's find out. Hey everyone, Brandon here. Throughout Pokemon's history, we have received many adorable doggo Pokemon. I mean, in this recent generation alone, we got 3 new lines. And I am talking about dog Pokemon, not Furbait Central over here. Cute quadrupedal doggos like Yamper, Lillipup, or Rockruff. With these parameters in place, we have 11 types to fill, so let's get into it. Starting us off is the ground type. For this, we have Sedimut, the dingo Pokemon, from the Agrios region by Fakemans. As its classification suggests, it's based on the dingo. Its ground typing comes from the habitat of the dingo, with it being able to live in the hot and arid deserts of the Australian outback, though it can be found all over Australia. The dingo's sandy brown coat also lends itself to the ground type. Sedimut love to dig holes everywhere. This leads to many people not liking them, but a large variety of Pokemon are able to find shelter in the holes that Sedimut leave unattended. At level 26, Sedimut evolves into Digingo, the dingo Pokemon. Its mudcake tail has evolved into a hand-like appendage that can act as a shovel. Given its name, I'm sure you can tell this tail gets used a lot. This actually refers to an aboriginal myth in which a dingo digs up an entire watering hole. There is an old Agrios legend that says the Digingo was responsible for digging up the many bodies of water around the region. Next up is the Ice type. For this, we have Furzin, the puppy Pokemon, from the Firen region by Michael Ryan. Furzin is based on the Icelandic sheepdog, whose ancestors were dogs that were brought to the country by Vikings. Furzin will do anything to make their trainers happy. They are easily excited and will pounce on strangers to lick them, which usually ends up freezing the lick recipient. After using a Ghost-type move 20 times, Furzin evolves into Snowwarg, the imprisoned Pokemon. Snowwarg is based on wargs, a kind of enormous wolf from Norse mythology, the most famous example being Fenrir. Legends say that Snowwarg created its icy chains to bind its true power. Otherwise, everyone and everything around it would be frozen solid. To learn more about Furzin, Snowwarg, and the Firen region, make sure to check out Michael's YouTube channel. For the water type, we have Dewolf, the puppy Pokemon by Mestizo's region. Dewolf is of course based on Dalmatians, but also firefighters, which they are commonly associated with. Dewolf is very helpful. It can smell smoke from over 5 miles away, treat burns, and is even capable of dragging fully grown people and Pokemon out of burning buildings. At level 25, Dewolf evolves into Raynine, the Aqua Hound Pokemon. Raynine's name is taken quite literally with its now range-up-like spots, ears, and tail, and raincoat-esque appearance. Raynine is the go-to partner for firefighters. The fire department only needs to bring a single Raynine to extinguish many burning structures. The rest of the doggos in this video were made by myself and various artists who I will credit as we go. So first is the fighting type. For this, with the help of Tubbs-AZ, we have Scrap-Up, the scrappy Pokemon. Scrap-Up is inspired by the Indian pariah dog, which is native to the Indian subcontinent. Indian pariah dogs can be both wild street dogs and domesticated house dogs. They are quite intelligent and are commonly trained as guard or police dogs, which is where Scrap-Up's fighting type comes into play. You can also see the fur pattern around its wrists emulates the bandaged up fists of a boxer. Scrap-Up use their keen sense of hearing to detect nearby Pokemon battles. They will interrupt them and then try to take on both opponents at once. After using the move Bite 20 times, Scrap-Up evolves into a Mongrel, the Devil Dog Pokemon, a fighting dark type. Upon evolution, a Mongrel gains the additional inspiration of the Dhole, also known as the Asiatic or Indian Wild Dog. The dark striping of its wrist fur continues from Scrap-Up, but it also is meant to reference hyenas. Its dark typing and classification comes from the Dhole's nickname of the Devil Dog, or the Red Devil, which its horn-like ears and forked tail reference as well. A Mongrel's name comes from a Mongol, which means evil in Hindi, and Mongrel, which is a dog of no discernible type or breed, which plays into how it is a mix of 3 different animals. A Mongrel tend to start battles they have no intention of finishing. Once they want to be done, they can somehow persuade the Pokemon they are battling to target someone else. For these next 2, I worked with Meowth. So for the grass type, we have Scottree, the leaf dog Pokemon. This little guy is inspired by the Scottish Terrier and the Skye Terrier, which are both Scottish dog breeds. Scottish Terriers were bred to hunt vermin on farms in the lush green Scottish Highlands. And the Skye Terrier hails from the also very lush and green Isle of Skye, so the grass typing felt very natural for it. Also, I thought the longer coats of both breeds looked like they would blend well into a leafy, almost hanging garden-like inspiration. Scottree's name is a mix of tree and Scotty, the nickname for the Scottish Terrier. Though we already had a partly Scotland-inspired region with Galar, I felt it could use some more representation in Pokemon. And it isn't at all because I'm 33% Scottish. Not at all. Scotchery spend their days playing in fields and forests. It is said they used to come from the Galar region before they were moved to a new one out of risk of extinction. At level 26, Scotchery evolves into Sithorn, the Kusith Pokemon. As its classification notes, Sithorn is based on the Gaelic mythological hound, the Kusith, which is also said to roam around the Scottish Highlands. The Kusith is a wolf-like creature with a dark green shaggy coat and a long curled tail, which lends itself well to a grass type with vines all over it. Sithorn also has the inspiration of the Scottish deerhound, which were bred to stalk and hunt deer, just like wolves do. They also have a darker shaggy coat, like the Kusith. Sithorn patrol deeply wooded forests. If you are perceived as a threat, you will hear a few howls. You will have to act before the third howl or risk its wrath. Next is the dragon type. For this, we have Dogon and Drakend. Dogon is based on the Italian Greyhound, and Drakend is based on the English Greyhound. So how exactly do Greyhounds mix with the dragon type? Well, aside from their long, slender appearance, there is also a mythical beast called the Cali Greyhound. Though it isn't a dog like a greyhound, the commonality in the naming is what tied these elements together, as well as a few other elements. Italian greyhounds have been popular for a long time with nobility and royalty, and the Cali Greyhound was invented for a coat of arms of a noble family in the 15th and 16th century. Also, like the greyhound, the Cali Greyhound is known for its speed and swiftness. Dogon's name inspiration is pretty obvious, but it also sounds like Dogon, which is a synonym for dam, which most European dragons are damned or cursed creatures. Drakend's name comes from Drake and Hound, but also sneaks in end in there, as in the end you might meet when facing a dragon. Dogon are kept as loyal companions by nobility in a far-off region. They are said to possess a mystical power that allows them to outpace any prey they hunt. Drakend guard castles with fierce devotion. Their slender bodies allow them to chase prey into confined areas, ensuring they never escape. Due to their incredible speed and elusiveness, Drakend were once thought to be mythical creatures. The rest of the dogs in this video were made with the help of Trevenart. So for the steel type, we have Shibaleer, the brave Pokemon. From dragons to the ones that slay them, Shibaleer is based on Shiba Inus and Knights, both of which are loyal to their master. The pattern of its fur is like that of chainmail, and its tail shape gives the illusion of a little sword. Shibaleer's name comes from Shiba, chivalry, and chevalier, which is a synonym for knight. Shibaleer always keep their armor-like fur shiny and well-kept. If even one hair is out of place, they can become as unruly as their hair. At level 26, Shibaleer evolves into Jinplar, the loyal Pokemon. Jinplar's name comes from Templar, which were an order of Christian knights, the Akita Inu, which are loyal and look like a big floofy Shiba Inu, and the Korean Jindo, another very loyal dog who bears a resemblance to the Shiba. There are actually two real stories about a loyal Akita named Hachiko and a loyal Jindo named Beiku that inspired this design. Hachiko waited for his owner to get off work at Shibuya Station every day. Even after his owner died at work, he would come back every day for 9 more years before passing away himself. There's actually a statue near Shibuya Station that commemorates Hachiko, and it started to get worn down from how many people would pet it. Beiku, on the other hand, was owned by an old woman on Jindo Island. The old woman sold her to a new owner that lived 180 miles away. Somehow, Beiku escaped from her new owner and over 7 months traveled all the way back to the old woman, who ended up keeping her as a reward for her loyalty. Loyalty is a big aspect of chivalry, so these two dog breeds naturally fit in with a knight theming. Jimplar's tail looks more like a full-on sword, and its fur has a more armored appearance to flesh out this knight aspect. Jimplar are extremely steadfast Pokemon. It will remain devoted to the trainer that caught them even after they are traded. Its steely resolution matches its steely appearance. On to the bug type. I was very curious how to make a bug dog Pokemon, given mammals and insects are two very different things. So I simply put bug dog into Google and it gave me this, a bug, also known as a pug and Boston Terrier mix. So with that in mind, here is Pugrub and Bee Terrier. The big old goofy eyes of the pug melts perfectly into the giant eyes of a bug like a fly or dragonfly. Pugrub emulates a grub, but also how little and chubby newborn puppies can be. Oh my goodness, look how cute they are! For Bee Terrier, we went with a more general bug look, giving it elements of caterpillars, bees, moths, and flies. Its name comes from beetle and terrier, but also sounds like bee terrier. Our channel members actually voted for this to be its name, so if you want to help in the video creation process, get sneak peeks at upcoming videos, and see videos early, become a member. It really helps more videos like this happen. Pugrub are ostensibly useless without the aid of a Bee Terrier. They survive off of sheer cuteness alone. Bee Terrier carry many diseases that prove fatal to humans and Pokemon alike, though their mouth and teeth are too small to actually bite anything to spread these diseases. Next up is the poison type. For this, we have Pupest and Burnoxic. They are inspired by St. Bernards and the ever-famous Stephen King novel and horror movie, Cujo. For those unaware, Cujo is about a St. Bernard that goes rabid and terrorizes a mother and her child. This rabidness is how Pupest and Burnoxic get their poison typing. Their designs also play into the stereotypical depiction of St. Bernards, who have a barrel of brandy around their neck. And with brandy being a type of alcohol, this also folds into its poison typing. Pupest's name comes from puppy, pest, and pestilence, and Burnoxic's name comes from Bernard, toxic, and noxious. Pupest and Burnoxic have a sac on their throat full of incredibly toxic poison. One bite is enough to fell a Wailord in a matter of seconds. For the flying type, you know me, I love a good cloud motif, and there are plenty of floofy dogs that could combine with this idea, but the floofiest of all are the Pomeranian and the Chow Chow. So with that said, here is Pombus and Chowd. I gave them derpy names on purpose just to add to this cute factor, with Pombus being a mix of Pomeranian and Nimbus, and Chowd being, you know, Chow and Cloud. These designs also reference when you look up into the sky and try to see if clouds look like different animals. Pombus energetically play up in the clouds. They will chow down on rain clouds to stay hydrated, and are known to accidentally cause thunderstorms from the ruckus they create while playing. Chowd, on the other hand, are much more relaxed and choose to spend their time gently floating in the sky, trying to stay away from any trouble on the land. Next up is the Psychic type. My thought process for a Psychic type doggo was naturally to use the smartest dog as a base, and that title is held by none other than the Border Collie. So put those elements together and you get Prodigy and Mascali. Their names are based on Prodigy and Masquerade, but not just any masquerade, it's based on a... Yep, we brought in a Phantom of the Opera inspiration as well. The Phantom, whose real name is Eric, was a musical prodigy and genius who lived a sequestered life due to deformities he was born with, which he covers with a mask. Mascali reflects the Phantom in its mask and secondary ghost typing, and if you look closely at both Prodigy and Mascali, you can see that their snouts look like a creepy soulless eye. Prodigy are born with incredibly high intelligence. Some have even said they heard them speak to them. Mascali can turn thoughts into sound. It plays haunting melodies that can enchant any who listen to them. And that's a dog Pokemon of every type. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Sinistcha and Polteageist are two drink-dwelling ghost Pokemon enclosed in a teacup and teapot. So what would it look like if we changed what kind of drink they were based on to make a Sinistcha and Polteageist of every type? Hey everyone, Brandon here. So a little while back, the artist Eeveelutions here, aka Ethan, had started making a bunch of different Sinistcha and Polteageist forms, starting with two from his collaborative project with PokeTour, the Cadia region. Feeling inspired, I hopped on board this forms quest and collaborated with Ethan to bring all these different T-boys to life. And if you like what you see, be sure to check out Ethan over on Instagram. They do great work. Anyway, let's just get right into it with the Sinistcha that inspired this video. Cadian Sinistcha, which is a ghost electric type. It's based on energy drinks in general, with the energy that these drinks give our bodies translating into the energy that electricity gives the technology it powers. It evolves into Energized. It is said that trying to take a sip of one of them can leave you so hyperactive and jittery that you have insomnia for days. These forms came about as the popularity of energy drinks in Cadia began to rise. Let's move on to this flying type Sinistcha based on Red Bull. Get it? Because it gives you wings? Pokemon would probably never make a brand connection this direct, but we couldn't resist the pun. And it makes for a fun flying type, with the wings being made of the drink exploding out of the can. When the can is opened all the way, it unleashes the true being inside. Its evolution, Polteageist. This ghastly-faced winged bull is not only a combination of Polteageist, Red Bull's name and slogan, but also refers to the Lamassu, Assyrian protector deities that are depicted as human-faced bulls with bird wings. Lamassu aren't the only winged creatures in the Assyrian mythos, though. There are also winged genies, which appear alongside Lamassu in Assyrian sculpture. Polteageist itself resembles these winged genies, with its can acting as a sort of genie's lamp. Being around both Sinistcha and Polteageist makes you feel floating and light, like you're safe as long as these Pokemon are on your team, which also leaves you feeling energized and ready to take on any challenge ahead of you. Moving on from one kind of caffeinated drink to another, we have this ground-type Sinistcha and Polteageist based on a good old cup of joe, with this of course being based around the pun of ground coffee. These Sinistcha are actually found cold, but when it evolves into Polteageist, it is always steaming, and can use the steam to communicate via hand signs. These variants are very popular in Unova, so much so that the imported population has begun to extend into the wild and into other neighboring regions. Let's keep this coffee train moving into this dark-type Sinistcha and Polteageist. Continuing the pun from the last one, but instead this is a dark roast coffee. Not only is the roast dark, but so is their attitude, being the sort of gloomy emo type. I imagine that they're like the overworked killjoy office worker who drinks the coffee that looks like the brown sludge, like in the cartoons, but in all actuality is the coffee they drink. The classic glass coffee pot of this Polteageist really sells this idea to me. Mondays, am I right? With their dark typing and general demeanor, these forms are obviously a bit more aggressive than the others, and the angrier they are, the more hot they become. Now let's go from an absolutely bitter form of coffee to an absolutely sweet form with this fairy-type Sinistcha. It is based around those hyper-sweet, super colorful, barely qualifies as coffee milkshake type drinks you can get at Starbucks, like the unicorn or tie-dye frappuccinos, which plays very well into the fairy-type's affinity for sweet food Pokemon. It evolves into this. To be honest, I sat with this and for the life of me couldn't come up with a solid name for it. Like, it is just a bit too far removed to be a Polteageist variant, and I thought Polteageist as in cappuccino, but I'm not 100% on it. If you have a fitting name idea, let me know down in the comments. With their super sweet demeanor and taste, these forms became very popular in big cities, and have started being exported all over the Pokemon world. And from one kind of shake to another, we move on to the fighting type with this protein shake-based Sinistcha. This flexing form is based on the pre-packaged kinds of protein shakes that you see at Walmart and feel oddly judged when you walk near them. Wait, is that just me? Well, anyway, it evolves into Polteageist, and that name could not have worked out better. Get it? Worked out? Okay, I'll stop. In any case, Polteageist is a true gym bro in a true gym bro shaker cup, like the kind you prepare from home before you go get absolutely swole. Speaking of swole, Polteageist absolutely is. Those big old protein-packed muscles aren't just for show either, able to deliver an absolutely yoked shadow punch. Obviously, these two are popular with athletic trainer classes like hikers and swimmers. After that form, I'm sure you're feeling the burn. So how about these fire-type forms for Sinistcha and Polteageist based on hot cocoa? This one was an absolute given. When you think of hot drinks, hot cocoa is one of the first that comes to mind. These forms radiate a comforting, cozy warmth that leaves you feeling friendly, which all in all makes for great companions during the winter, or those who are active during the snow, such as skiers or snowplow operators. Also, one detail I love is how the cup on Polteageist looks like a little sweater. So cute. While we're on the topic of milk-based drinks, let's talk about these normal type Sinistcha and Polteageist based on Moo Moo milk. With the normal type being associated with every bovine Pokemon that exists, naturally, the normal type fits this variant best, as well as the fact that milk is a fairly standard or regular thing. Once evolved, Polteageist actually takes on attributes of our beloved Miltank, but the good ones, not its weird nipples. Oh my god, they're staring at me, aren't they? Speaking of standard, another thing that is very standard on Earth is water. So obviously the water type Sinistcha and Polteageist had to be water. Sinistcha is also based on an in-game item, the freshwater, and Polteageist is in one of those 5-liter jugs you see in office buildings, which I actually used to buy and bring home myself. Just saying, mountain water tastes better than tap water. These forms can purify the water they touch, filtering out any toxins to make it clean, drinkable water. And a way this could manifest is in an ability like Filter, or maybe a custom ability or move that purifies poison-type moves and turns them into water-type moves. Speaking of poison, let's move on to a group of variants I like to call the please don't demonetize me, I'm just talking about adult beverages. If you're of proper age, drink responsibly. You hear that, YouTube? First up, naturally for the purple and red inclined poison type, we have this wine-based Sinistcha and its evolution, Polter Wine. I'm sure I don't really need to explain why we picked these for the poison type, right? Well, an additional inspiration is the poisoned wine trope in many movies, so these two like to trick people into drinking them, which of course makes the drinker feel sick shortly after. From what some would consider a refined drink to what others may consider sewer water, myself included, the steel type is repped by this variant of Sinistcha and a new evolution, Polterkeg, which are based on beer, with Sinistcha being in a can and Polterkeg being a keg. And its name also sounds like powder keg, which drinking from either of these two would be like. Them both coming out of the sides of the objects they're in is a reference to the act of shotgunning a beer, where you poke a hole in the side of the can and try to drink the whole thing in one go. Once again, just to be clear, YouTube gods, I don't condone these actions, I am just explaining them. These Pokemon are always dizzy and can never seem to navigate around well. Even being around them can make you feel sick to your stomach. I imagine that they and Spindo would be great friends. Moving on to some harder drinks, we have these rock-type variants. They are based on the pun of whiskey stones, which are used to help chill the drink without diluting it. I mean, have you had lemonade with ice in it? After a while, it just becomes sweet water. In any case, these forms aren't the smartest. You could say they have rocks for brains, which Polteageist literally does. Honestly, I feel as though this really isn't a Polteageist variant, but a new evolution once again, but couldn't find a good name. Maybe Polteageist? I don't know. Regardless, it is modeled after a very famous brand of whiskey whose name I won't say for branding purposes, but you know the one. The last of this section is the bug type, with this Sinistcha and another new evolution, Polteageist, which of course has to reference tequila and the infamous worm that resides within it, which has been replaced by a Weedle in this case. With Polteageist, the spirit of the deceased Weedle becomes one with the Pokemon upon evolution, like a fusion. Now that's a real mixed drink. Alright, let's get back to some drinks that everyone can enjoy. How about a couple sweet ones? Starting with the sweetest drink of all, soda, or pop, or soda pop, however you say it. So here is a Psychic type orange soda variant of Sinistcha. The Psychic typing comes in with oranges being particularly good for your brain, as the vitamin C within them helps protect your brain from the decay of aging. Which is not to say that soda has any of those properties, but you get the idea. This Sinistcha evolves when you give them one of the many mints introduced in Generation 8. It works like that classic science experiment of putting Mentos into your soda, and doing so evolves it into Eingeist. Its name, design, and typing all match the world-renowned theoretical physicist Albert Einstein, with the fizz of the soda matching the wild hair Einstein is well known for. The other sweet variant is one you might find at your local 7-Eleven, being a slushy variant of Sinistcha with a new evolution, Slushygeist. I would not recommend holding these bonds, however, as touching them for even a second can cause severe frostbite. Talk about brain freeze. You might have to cuddle up with the fire variants after an encounter with these two. Now let's end with two lines that are actually based on tea. First is the grass type, which naturally had to be based on green tea, with it being non-oxidized and having health benefits and medicinal properties. So here they are. While it is meant to be a grass ghost type, it could easily be a grass rock type design-wise. These two forms have nutrients within them that can heal most common illnesses. They would probably have abilities like healer or natural cure. And finally, for the dragon type, we have these forms that are based on oolong tea. Oolong literally translates to black dragon in Chinese. As you can see, they both have draconic-shaped liquid, seemingly with a mind of their own. This is actually the arcane energy within them manifesting in its own form, as they can't completely contain their full power. And that's a Sinistcha and Polteageist of every type. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Almost every region in Pokemon has some form of bird you can catch in the early section of the game, with most being normal flying type. But we have also received these early root birds with unique type combos. So what would an early root bird of every type look like? Hey everyone, Brandon here. The early root or regional bird has been a staple in the Pokemon franchise since its inception, but Pokemon like Talonflame and Corviknight took the concept of early root birds and elevated them to a new level, both in design and in the fact that they gained a type combo that wasn't the standard normal flying. There are 6 type combinations that the regional birds have had. Obviously normal flying like I just mentioned, fire flying with Talonflame, flying steel with Corviknight, and even pure flying with Rookidee and Corvisquire, water flying with Wingull and Pelipper, and yes, those do count, they're actually catchable before Tailo in Gen 3 and 6, and finally, flying electric with Wattrel and Kilowattrel. Though they are more so early game birds, since the earliest they can be found is near Levincia, which, because of Paldea's open world, can be the second gym. I know there are probably some of you out there that want a traditional, no caveats, electric type early root bird. So I present the early root birds of my India-based Fakemon region, Devar, Baybill, Shakapok, and Homrain, which I worked with Pokémon to create. They are based on different kinds of hornbills: the gray Indian hornbill, the oriental pied hornbill, and the great hornbill respectively. If you want to learn more about them, then you can check out this video linked in the card. Next up, we have a couple from my friend Michael Ryan. First up, we have the Psychic type. So here is Chibi from Michael's Africa-inspired Liwika region. Chibi at this point is only pure flying, but will gain the typing upon evolution, as most early root birds do. Chibi is inspired by the African sacred ibis, which is not called sacred for nothing. Why will become apparent as we take a look at Chibi's evolutions in Quibus and Thothesis. Their typing and Thothesis' name are inspired by the ibis-headed Egyptian god of wisdom, knowledge, and magic, Thoth. He is also a god of science, art, and writing, which Thothesis is also heralded for, and is where the thesis part of its name comes from. Next, for the Ice type, we have Arcturn from Michael's Iceland-inspired Theron region. It is inspired by the Arctic tern found all over the Arctic regions of the Northern Hemisphere. Arcturn can withstand frigid Arctic winds. They will travel in flocks across Theron in search of a place to nest, until they're ready to evolve into Hakryo. This Pokemon is inspired by some of the hawk species found around Iceland, and the wind generated from its wings can frost the ground below. Finally, Hakryo evolves into Gyrfalcold. Gyrfalcold's name and design are inspired by the national animal of Iceland, the gyrfalcon. Gerfalcon is also pretty obviously inspired by the Greek mythological beast, the griffin, which makes sense given griffins are said to come from the north, and Gerfalcon is the largest falcon in the world. The mere flap of Gerfalcon's mighty wings can cause fierce blizzards, and it is said to be strong enough to lift icebergs. If you would like to learn more about these Pokemon and the Fearon region, make sure to check out Michael's YouTube channel linked in the description. Moving on to the grass type, we have T-Peep and Tribeak from the US West Coast-based Westco region, which are based on turkeys and Native American clothing. T-Peep are very friendly and easy to take care of, though since they are young, they can be a bit clumsy. Tribeak tend to be very lax in the wild. Inexperienced trainers who catch them as Tribeak find difficulty motivating them to act. It is advised to train and evolve your T-Peep rather than catch wild Tribeak. But a well-trained Tribeak will evolve into Poultry. These Pokemon govern the flora of Westco. If an area is abundant with plant life, that means a strong poultry resides there, and is a sign that the land is very fertile. The name of this bird is just so punny, and I love it. From one West Coast-based region to another, for the fairy type, we have Pitafal from the Mojave region by Tubbs AZ. This Pokemon is based on the Gamble's quail found in the southwestern US. Pitafal is always trying to stay out of sight. Its plumage is very sensitive and can detect the slightest sign of danger. Pitafal evolve into Pomplume. The once woeful, sorry Pitafal has gained quite the ego. In fact, that's Pomplume's classification, the ego Pokemon. They take great pride in their vibrant, meticulously clean feathers, leading them to have a high and mighty personality. This is only further accentuated when they evolve into Regaliant. Upon evolution, Regaliant adds in the additional inspiration of the Californian quail, as well as regalia, aka the fancy clothes that royal people wear. Regaliant's feathers are so pristine that they glimmer brightly in the sunlight. How's that for a dazzling gleam? It has a very uptight personality, especially when it comes to its plumage, always stopping to fix it no matter what the situation. Continuing to Tubbs' new Greece-based region, Agoros, representing the dark type, we have Swabling. It is based on the common kingfisher and a swab, which is the lowest rank of pirate on a ship. You can see the swab elements in its bandana-like plumage and stripe across its chest. Swabling is very adept in the sea, able to collect mouthfuls of fish with ease. It has a very keen eye and can spot shining objects over the horizon. Swabling evolves into Swashbuckler, which is inspired by the bird species, the crake. I have been avoiding mentioning when the bird adds or switches a type for the sake of redundancy, but in this case, the entire color palette and design darkens to show the addition of the dark type from this evolution. This darkening spreads to its disposition as well, now having an obsession with shiny objects, relentlessly searching for them. It only hunts for food out of absolute necessity, but will usually send Swablings to get food for it instead. Swashbuckler evolves into Barbaroost. With this final stage, it becomes a full-fledged bird captain. Barbaroost is inspired by the Black Heron and the very infamous pirate of the Mediterranean, Barbarossa, also known as Redbeard. Barbaroost takes charge of multiple Swabling and Swashbuckler to raid unsuspecting boats that enter their territory. Their dark wings cast a looming shadow on its prey before it moves in for the attack. Moving on to the fighting type and yet another West Coast-based region, the Cadia region. Man, if I had a nickel for every time there was a West Coast-based region in this video, I would have 3 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened 3 times, right? Regardless, Cadia's early game bird line starts with Psychick. It is based on the red-tailed hawk, which is found all across the US, and superhero sidekicks. Much like a sidekick, Psychick will assist its parents in helping those in need. Though they are small, they can defend themselves well, which also refers to the DC hero Robin. At level 18, Psychick evolves into Vigilon. Now that these Pokemon are strong enough to be on their own, they go around protecting small Pokemon from other predators or threats, but they can still act recklessly at times. This evolution and personality change refers to how some sidekicks in superhero movies and comics become heroes in their own right, or go rogue like Red Hood. The fact that it's an America-themed avian also references the Marvel hero Falcon stepping into the role of Captain America. And finally, Vigilon evolves into Valiero. Now a full-on hero, this Pokemon is highly regarded as the bravest Pokemon species, protecting small Pokemon with their powerful beak and legs, sometimes risking their life to do so. While maybe not intentional, Valiero's plumage is reminiscent of the costume of the DC hero Stargirl. On to something weak to the fighting type, the rock type. For this, we have Squebble from Dark and Windy. Its typing is actually a pun. It is based on the rock pigeon, so it's literally a rock pigeon. Squebble are often found near rocky areas, pecking at different stones in order to find the ones they like best. They will get into fights if a group tries to take a rock that they want. Squebble evolves into Boldivard. This regal-looking bird is based on the Jacobin pigeon, a type of domestic pigeon that descends from the rock pigeon. Its regal looks make it highly photogenic. The rocks amongst its plumage were collected by Squebble. So I say this every time, but the bug type has always been a thorn in my side when it comes to of every type videos, especially with this one, as the early root bug is already a thing. So how do you make a bird bug hybrid that still feels like an early root bird? Well, how about a bird that looks like a bug? Or wait, how about a bug that looks like a bird that looks like a bug? Or why not both? What am I talking about? The hummingbird and the hummingbird hawk moth. The hummingbird is often said to be bug-like in appearance in nature, and the hummingbird hawk moth looks like said hummingbird. I mean, it's in the name. So with the artistic talents of Chartius Arts, we created Humoth. This itty-bitty bird Pokemon matches the likes of Cutiefly and Joltik in size. It loves to land on the flowers of Floettes, and they enjoy each other's company. They will make nests close to their evolution, Mothawk. This evolution adds in the additional inspiration of the Cooper's Hawk. It is called the Hummingbird Hawk Moth after all, so why not fuse them all together? The Cooper's Hawk actually has a semi-symbiotic relationship with hummingbirds, as they don't eat them. So hummingbirds will make their nests close to them, because Cooper's Hawks do eat the things that try to prey on hummingbirds. So there's an inadvertent guardianship going on there. This is the same case for Mothawk, who watches over all the nests of the Humoth, keeping them safe from potential predators. Also, it is always trying to obtain Ladybug and Cat Noir's Miraculouses. Oh, sorry, wrong franchise. Now for the poison type. We haven't had a poison flying type since Crobat in Gen 2, which I find to be criminal. So I took great pleasure working with Antarctis Astray to create Pitoxin. This purple and green clad baby bird is based on one of the few poisonous birds in the world, the hooded Pitohui, which is endemic to New Guinea. Pitohui have a kind of neurotoxin on their skin and feathers that causes numbness and burning when touched. This neurotoxin is called homobatrachotoxin and is actually found in Colombian poison dart frogs. They don't produce this toxin themselves, but it is actually a result of their diet. Back to Pitoxin. Much the same as the Pitohui, its feathers are very poisonous, being caused by a reaction from the berries they eat. Pitoxin's toxicity is dependent on the kind of berries that they have consumed. At level 22, Pitoxin evolves into Poison. This deadly Pokemon is based on the Chinese mythological bird, and forgive me if I butcher this, the Zhenao, or more simply, the Zhen. A poisonous bird with purple feathers and green tips, which is what inspired this line's coloration. The Zhen's feathers were said to contain a poison called Zhendu that would be used to carry out assassinations, and that its excrement could dissolve stone. I've heard of explosive diarrhea, but not corrosive diarrhea. Antarctis Astray and I also modeled it after typical depictions of a phoenix, but rather than being a fire-based bird, it is a poison-based one. Naturally, for the ground type, it would make sense to have a ground-based bird. So I decided to go with a bird found running around the deserts of the southwestern US, the Roadrunner. With that said, let me introduce you to Terron, which I worked with the talented Subarashi to create. This cute little dude uses its long legs to travel at great speeds and deliver punishing kicks to its opponents. It will kick up dust storms when it feels threatened, which it uses to escape. Terron have been known to challenge cars to a race if it enters their territory. Terron evolves into Terrian. This Pokemon's name comes from terrain, just like its previous stage, but also incorporates its new inspiration of the Rhea, a distant relative of the ostrich and emu that hails from South America, but is also the name of a Greek goddess, which is an earth goddess of sorts. Though Rheas are flightless birds, they use their wings to help direct them while running. The appearance that these feathers take while running reminded me of soft clouds, so we made Terrian's wings into dust clouds to represent that. And yes, it is a flightless bird that has the flying type, just like the Doduo line, Delibird, and Galarian Zapdos. I also worked with Subarashi for the ghost type, and we both agreed that it had to be represented by what Brazilians call the ghost bird, the Potu. These little relatives of the nightjar are nocturnal and let out a very mysterious and haunting call. So with that all in mind, we made Butu. Its general shape and plumage are meant to reference sheet ghosts. Subarashi thought to add this little triangle-like feather between its eyes to reference the headband or crown that some Japanese ghosts are depicted wearing, called a tenkon. Butu blends into the trees of the jungles they haunt. It will pop out at Pokemon passing by to scare them, which leads to it letting out a haunting chortle. And that laugh only gets more creepy when Butu evolves into Kakui. This evolution has gone full-on nightmare mode. The Great Potu has the most creepy looking jet black eyes that are like something out of an SCP entry. Kakui's name comes from cackle, as in a sinister laugh, and Kakui, the Argentinian and Bolivian name for the Potu, which means to remain, which is just so ominous. Kakui's disturbing laughter can be heard throughout the jungles it resides in. If a Pokemon or human enters its territory, it will use every tactic it can to terrify them, absorbing and feeding off their fear. Finally, we have the dragon type. When thinking of a dragon bird for this video, my mind went to none other than the famous cockatrice. This chicken-dragon combo is found in the Bible, but also in many cultures around the world under different names, like the Japanese Basan and the Basilisco Chilote from Chile. So I worked with the amazing Soy Charlitos to make Chickatrice. This little guy's sad expression refers to how cockatrices would turn things to stone with its gaze. As far as design, I took inspiration from the cockatrices from Final Fantasy XII, because I've always just loved how bulbous they are. And that game even has something called a Chickatrice as well. Back to the Pokemon though. Its scales are always a mess, falling off and being replaced often. This leads to Chickatrice having low self-esteem and therefore looking sad. But it gains a whole lot of self-esteem when it evolves into Gawkatrice. This Pokemon has not only gained confidence, but a striking plumage worthy of gawking at, which is where its name comes from, but also AU is the symbol for gold on the periodic table of elements. Gawkatrice's golden coloration is inspired by a distant relative to wild chickens, the golden pheasant. This bird's coloration lends itself so well to a dragon type in my opinion, and the golden pheasant is actually one of China's national birds, alongside the red-crowned crane. Gawkatrice now uses their replaceable scales as a weapon, spinning around and launching them at opponents. When hit, they will stick in and cause a stunning effect. And that is an early root bird of every type. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. The Legendary Birds, a trio of mighty elemental bird Pokemon introduced in the first generation of Pokemon, and later given regional forms in Generation 8. With 6 type combos filled by these birds, what might a legendary bird of every type look like? Hey everyone, Brandon here. And in August, I held a contest to celebrate us reaching 300,000 subscribers here on the channel, in which you guys could submit your ideas for a legendary bird of every type. And Fungusmon and I would take those winning entries and redesign them into consistent designs for this video. That I would then give to the winners to do with what they please. And boy, did you guys deliver. We had upwards of 600 plus entries to this contest, which didn't make it any easier to choose. So for every type, we'll have a few runners up that I'll briefly discuss before getting to the winner and their redesigned entry. So let's begin with the pure flying type, our only single-typed entry in this video, which has some pretty epic entries like Cyclonce by Sassafrasinid, which is based on the Harpy Eagle, and that name is absolutely fantastic, or Thunderdose by Slarel's which is one of the most epic entries in this entire contest. But there was a concept that won me over more than the epicness of these designs, and that is Nutsero by Lee's Fakemon. Before I explain why this one, allow me to introduce the redesign, Aerocero, the flight Pokemon. The initial concept was that of a baby bird, which is the base stage version of the legendary birds, hence why it was initially named Tornadose as the 12th bird, but now has been changed to the 0th. Unlike the other legendary trios that have concrete origins, such as the legendary beasts or the Regi trio, the legendary birds' origins are left ambiguous, which isn't helped by their Galarian counterparts that add in another layer of mystery to their origins, insinuating these are completely separate Pokemon. So what better than a baby bird legendary that is capable of evolving into these Pokemon? It fits the existing narrative and explains how different legendary birds can exist simultaneously, and evolve differently when introduced to different elements, such as the environments each bird is known for, or even the Dynatree, which the Galarian birds frequent. With Lugia being the trio master of these Pokemon, perhaps in our headcanon, Lugia either knows about Aerocero or gives birth to them, raising them in different environments to become powerful Pokemon perfectly curated to watch over and protect those places. With Lugia being the Lord of the Sea, it would make sense for them to want eyes over the land as well, with the legendary birds being known for roaming across the Pokemon world. As far as Aerocero's design, Fungus and I wanted to make this feel like a Gen 1 bird, add in the feeling of a legendary Pokemon, and a pixie mythical like Mew, Celebi, or Hoopa, all the while incorporating the aspects of Lee's initial design. Fungus even added 3 little colored light refractions in the eyeball of Aerocero to reference the original 3 legendary birds. Just like the Pidgey and Spearow lines, there is no specific bird this is based on, and is just meant to feel like a generic bird, which adds up with it being a pure flying type and being capable of evolving into a bunch of different birds. Each of the original legendary birds' ability are pressure, but have hidden abilities that deal with their type, and 2/3 of them have to do with contact moves, with the last one having to do with evasion, which helps with contact. And the Galarian birds' abilities have to do with their stats being lowered or raised. So each of these new legendary birds will follow one of these rules, and if those abilities don't exist, we'll make new ones. For Aerocero's hidden ability, I feel Big Pecs would be appropriate. It has to do with its typing, and it prevents a stat from being lowered. Also, though the Galarian birds have base 90 signature moves, the original birds do not. But they do have very powerful moves of their type available to them. So yet again, some will have unique moves and some will just get powerful moves of their type. Aerosero would probably adopt Aeroblast as a signature move, seeing as in the lore we've established, Lugia is a mentor or parent to this Pokemon. Before we move on to the next type, if you're enjoying this video, I would greatly appreciate you hitting that like button, subscribing, and leaving a comment down below. It really does help and it means a lot to me. Whew, almost 4 minutes into this video and that was just the first entry. So let's move on to the fourth number in the Spanish number system, which was designated for the water type, Aquatro. There were many cool entries that used physical water as a design element, such as these spectacular designs and concepts here. But one entry that sparked ideas in my head was this entry by Radical Reindeer. The base inspiration of this Pokemon is what got me. It is based on an animal called the Great Dusky Swift, which are known to make their nests behind waterfalls. I really wanted to feature such a unique animal rather than playing into things like a seagull or pelicans, with that design niche already taken by Wingull and Pelipper. So with that said, here is Aquatro, the stream Pokemon. This design underwent quite the transformation, but we tried to maintain or put more focus on a few elements. We made the body and beak shape more reminiscent of the Dusky Swift, but kept in the element of a predatory bird by mixing in a peregrine falcon with the beak, but also in its feather pattern. We kinda gave it the hooded appearance of a trained peregrine falcon, which the hood cascades down much like a waterfall. And speaking of, we kept the literal waterfall tail. Fungus and I had a bit of trouble making it look dissimilar from Articuno's tail, which is already sort of river-like, but I think we found a good middle ground. Aquatro is the guardian over the rivers and waterfalls of the Pokemon world, being known to hide within or behind them. With its affinity for water, Lugia sees Aquatro as its successor, the heir to the title of Lord of the Sea. Its hidden ability would be Water Absorb, and the stronger moves it would get are Hydro Pump and Aqua Tail, which just fits way too well. Now we move on to the grass type, which I had designated Grassinko. Some of the runner-ups were this entry by Pewter City Gym and this entry by Zavzav, which I thought were very cool but ultimately a bit too similar to winners I had chosen for other types. And there was also Cactorse by Retroplasm that had a very Gen 1 feeling to it that I quite enjoyed. But ultimately the winner I chose was this entry by Juno or Loner Eevee, which they said also could be named Masinko, as it is based on golden plover chicks, whose plumage initially looks like moss in order to camouflage themselves from potential predators. So Fungus and I took this idea and created Masinko, the Flora Pokemon. We changed the design a bit to remove the flowers, which were a little too similar to Shaman, instead opting for the foliage on the back to mimic a flower itself. We also took the moss and seed-covered body, which was a bit rounded, and fully leaned into it, making the back bush-like and mixing in some features of a kiwi, a plant named bird in and of itself. Masinko spreads the seeds on its back as it runs, fostering new life across the plains and valleys it calls home. This would manifest in its hidden ability, Seed Sower, which Juno had already picked and fits our parameters really well. Seed-based moves would also come into play, with it learning Bullet Seed, Seed Bomb, Sappy Seed, and even Seed Flare, Shaman's signature move, which refers back to the original design connection. Rather than growing flowers like Shaman's, Masinko's seeds grow grass, trees, and crops, filling a different ecological niche. And a type that is often matched with the grass type, especially in Gen 1, is Poison, which I had named Toxace. We had so many cool entries for this type. It was pretty much tied with Ghost for having the most entries in the entire contest. Like these by Luxray, Wallart Bag 22, Zebra Knight, Shark Guy 8, and even one from fellow Fakemon PokeTuber, Drake 95. But the entry that won was such a unique idea that I had to pick it, and that is this entry by Rotond Howdy. It plays into the idea of chickenpox, which I thought was a fun twist on the idea of a poison type, centering around illness. I am also a sucker for a good pun, and so is Pokemon, so it's very fitting. Now allow me to introduce Toxace, the Pestilence Pokemon. We had to taper the design a little bit to make it more uniform with the rest of these birds, so we simplified the color scheme to just white and red. A bit of a general gross warning here, the chickenpox pattern has been changed to these almost boil-like protrusions that in combination with its neck poof and comb look like a form of regalia, with this bird being the monarch of poison. You would probably think, why would Lugia want an illness-based legendary Pokemon running around making people sick? Well, it's actually quite the opposite. Toxace absorbs illness from Pokemon, people, and even plants, which amplifies its toxic power that it stores in the spots along its neck, that it then expels at opponents via its mouth. Toxace's hidden ability would very naturally be Poison Touch, and its moves would be Gunk Shot and a new base 90 physical poison move called Infectious Peck, where Toxace uses its massive toxic beak to peck at the opponent. Like many other poison type moves, it would have the chance to poison its target. I almost called the move Impection, but that felt like too much of a pun. Heading to 7 in Spanish and a type that is weak to poison, we have Pixiete for the fairy type. Y'all cast a wide net as far as inspirations, and I loved them all. Like a biblically accurate bird angel by Ivy, a hummingbird by Lupo, and this epic entry by Chris Farias, who I've actually worked with on the channel before. But the entry that won was this entry by Lady Nanachi Art. I loved the vibes this design gave off, feeling very in line with Titania, the Queen of Fairies. with its long robe-like wings and crest that emulates the wings of a fairy. The base of its wings are also meant to look like a fairy ring, circles of mushrooms which are said to be linked with good fortune, with Pixiette looking like it is being summoned out of this fairy ring. So Fungus and I took this idea and created Pixiette, the Fey Pokemon. Just like the poison type, we had to dial back some of the detailing, simplifying it to be more Pokemon-like while maintaining the aspects that made the entry unique. The shape of the wings was even altered slightly to make it look like a heart. Pixiette has spurred many legends of fairies all over the Pokemon world because of its fairy-like plumage. Not fairy Pokemon, literal fairies. Pixiette maintains a regal and kempt appearance as it gracefully saunters across the forest it resides in. It stays in these forests for the span of years, slowly nurturing the population of fairy-type Pokemon within it. It is rarely seen leaving or taking flight, unless it is time for it to move on to the next forest or there is a danger present. The forests Pixiette leave behind remain enchanted magical places for years after it is left, some for eternity. The moves Pixiette would learn are Dazzling Gleam and Misty Explosion. Its hidden ability could be Cute Charm, but that doesn't feel like it fits the grandeur of this Pokemon. So let's make a new ability called Enchanting, in which the target has a 30% chance of falling asleep after using a contact move on Pixiette. There are many fairy tales involving someone being put to sleep, or falling asleep in the wrong place and being captured by fairies. There is even Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, which has everything to do with fairies meddling in the affairs of humans, and has the king and queen of fairies, Oberon and Titania. I played Oberon in my high school's rendition of this play, so I have a particular fondness for it. See, I was always a bit magical. Ground is up next for what I call Giocho, which we had a bunch of varying entries that I all loved, like these here by Popley and FBarms99. But an idea that became increasingly prevalent was that of a burrowing owl, a type of desert owl that makes its nests and homes within the ground rather than in the trees. There were a couple versions of this idea submitted, but the incarnation that inspired me was this one by Sidonia Regions. The general body shape gave me an idea which I can only explain after we introduce Giocho, the earthen Pokemon. The way this entry was shaped made me think, why don't we shape the entire body like a hill or a mound of dirt? So the owl is literally within or burrowed in the ground. Giocho reside in deserts. Much like Pixiette, they don't move or fly often, living deep within the ground. They only come to the surface to protect Pokemon from harsh sandstorms and other natural events, by hiding them within their cavernous home. Given this lore, many of the sand abilities could work for its hidden ability, like Sand Rush, making it move faster in a sandstorm, which would be very helpful when needing to rescue Pokemon quickly. Its moves would be Earthquake and a new signature move I called Burrow Burst, a base 90 ground-type physically attacking move where Giocho digs a burrow underneath the opponent, creating a sinkhole that it then falls into, causing the opponent to flinch. Giocho has an okay speed stat, so this would be pretty powerful in combination with Sand Rush, but ultimately just a normal strong move if you go second. Speaking of normal, we have what I called Ordinueve. With normal, despite its name being varied in what constitutes its type, we got many differing entries. Like this Artist Bird by Vic aka Low Poly Fungi, this Missing No inspired entry by Mr. Fruitnik, this Rooster of Barcelos inspired Pokemon by Builder Bob, and the most hilarious entry of this entire contest, Pizza Nueve by Trainer Ampharos. But the concept that caught my eye was that of Oricorio by IVPL. The idea of a paper crane inspired normal type is fantastic, and becomes even more so when you mix in the idea of the 1,000 paper cranes or Senbazuru, a symbol of long life and commitment, usually offered as a gift to someone who is sick to wish for their recovery. So Fungus and I took this design and created Plainueve, the paper Pokemon. Wait, wasn't it named Ordinueve? Why the change? Well, its name is a bit of a double entendre, coming from plain, as in ordinary or regular, but also as in plane, like a paper airplane, which Plainueve's wings are reminiscent of. While we're on the subject, the wings are the most origami-like aspect of the design. We tried to take Ivy's design and make it feel like a living bird paper crane hybrid. The initial design kind of felt like an Ultra Beast like Kartana, or just an object Pokemon shaped like a bird, so we changed the eyes and made the body more bird-like. Just like Aerosero, Plainueve has these 3 colors throughout its design to reference the original trio. With Aerosero and Plainueve being the most normal birds of the lot, I felt this connection would make sense. Plainueve usually makes its home on the outskirts of small towns and villages, the Route 1s if you will. It is said that seeing one at the beginning of your trainer journey means it will be long and fruitful. Its wings have razor-thin edges, making for a wing attack you wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of. Which leads us into its moves. Normal type has an abundance of moves that would make sense for Plainueve, like Double Edge and Razor Wind, and yes, it would be more of a mixed attacker. As far as hidden abilities, not so much luck. Sharpness, Rough Skin, or Tough Claws could work, but they don't exactly fit the lore of this Pokemon or the parameters of the other birds. So how about instead we make a new ability called Paper Bound, which makes it so that when a contact move is used against Plainueve, the user is now stuck in battle and has their speed lowered by 1 stage. We move on to double digits for the Steel type, which I had named Gold Diez. The entries for this type were all very cool and edgy. pun intended, such as Gladiaze by Stellara and Albardiez by Dark Sylvania. The winning entry of this one had a bit of a unique take on it, and that was this entry by fellow Fakemon YouTuber Matt Moyer, with artistic assistance provided by their partner. The entry takes inspiration from a few things: the Quetzalcoatlus, a type of pterosaur from the late Cretaceous period, the Quetzalcoatl, for which the pterosaur is named, a draconic feather serpent from Aztec myth, and El Dorado, a myth of an ancient golden city hidden somewhere within Meso or South America. So with this idea, we created Goldiez, the metal Pokemon. We really only made slight changes to the design, such as elongating the beak to make it closer to the Quetzalcoatlus, and making the wings look like more of a uniform blade rather than the fanning that they did before. The head was also changed to mimic a sun, referencing Quetzalcoatl's relation to the sun, serving as the second son of 5 in an Aztec creation myth. We also tried to have a good color balance between bronze, silver, and gold, being 3 metals associated with each other. Steelwing, Iron Head, and Iron Tail are all a great fit as far as moves go. As far as its hidden ability, Iron Barbs could work, but I think Mirror Armor works even better, considering the only other Pokemon that has it is also a Steel Flying type armored bird. Goldiez's golden armor has led many to believe it originates from a hidden land of innumerable riches. Many have tried to follow it back to its home as it migrates, but none have been successful. This is due to the fact that Goldiez cuts through the sky at incredible speeds, which are comparable to a fighter jet's. We moved from the physical to the metaphysical with the ghost type that I had named Shadonse. Vultures were a popular option like these ones here that I really enjoyed. I also really enjoy these entries by Balog TJ and JX the Drawer. The entry that I thought worked best though was this entry by Jolly Mega 97, which is based on the Irish goddess Morrigan, a goddess of death which would take the shape of a crow or raven. So with this concept we made Shadonse, the soul Pokemon. We took the Raven inspiration and played it up by making its proportions closer to one. We also changed the purple to more of a bluish gray because it felt too much in the vein of Galarian Articuno. Plus, it kind of gives it that grayscale feeling, further playing into the idea of it being devoid of life or in limbo. Shadonse are usually found in graveyards, but will journey to areas engaged in war, reaping the souls of those felled in battle, absorbing them into their wings. Some have accused Shadonse of being a secret agent of chaos who incites these wars from the shadows. The truth of the matter is that Shadonse takes these collected souls and dispels the anger, pain, and suffering from within them, and releases them to pass on peacefully. This manifests in its signature move, Soul Cleanse, a base 90 attacking move with a 10% chance to reset the target's stat buffs. Wandering Spirit, Galarian Yamask ability, or Perish Body both work very well as a hidden ability for this Pokemon and the overall concept. Halloween was just last month, so let's go from the spooky to the creepy crawly with the bug type that I had named Betrace. The very popular idea amongst entries for this category was hummingbirds, like these incredible ones here. An entry though that stood out to me was this one by Ton B named Infestrace. It's an odd but fascinating mixture of vulture, pelican, and wasp infestation. We took this design and created Vespidose, the infested Pokemon. For this design, I also wanted to strip it back a bit to help it fall in line with the other birds, because it just had a few too many details. But the core design was very solid, so we kept that mostly intact. Vespidose commands these insects like Shino Aburame from Naruto. They are drawn to the pheromones it emits. Its name comes from Vespidae, a family of wasps. It is also where the scooter brand Vespa gets its name, which I don't know how that's relevant, but suddenly I want to watch Luca. Swarm is a fitting hidden ability as far as its name, but how it operates doesn't exactly fit, so I had the idea for an ability called Parasitic. If Vespidose is hit with a contact move, the user of said move has a 30% chance of becoming infested like the move Infestation. Attack Order and Defend Order would also be available to this Pokemon, which I feel fits great. For our penultimate legendary bird, we have the Dragon type, which was initially Dracaense, but some things had to be swapped around after Aerosero swapped places. With Dragon being a very epic type, naturally the entries reflected this like these stunning designs. The winner though was this entry by Splat the Crystal. It is based around the Shoebill Stork, this incredibly unique and large bird that looks oddly prehistoric. And this design was fairly simple, which allowed some wiggle room for Fungusinai. So with this entry we made Cockatrace, the Drake Pokemon. The name was coined by one of my mods, Grandstar, based on the cockatrice. And even though Cockatrace isn't based on a chicken, the half-bird, half-dragon vibe still fits the name. Cockatrace make their homes in abandoned castles or barren wastelands. It channels ancient arcane energy through its body, which you can see coming up from its throat. It will release this energy with its signature move, Arcane Blast, funneling the energy through its maw in a concentrated beam of swirling light, which does base 90 dragon type damage. And while this may seem like a purely special move, The trick to this attack is that it will either be special or physical depending on which does more damage. A hidden ability I think would be good for this Pokemon is Moxie, or I had an idea for a new one that plays into its signature move. This ability would be called Mystic Scales, and would be kind of like Contrary. If you try to lower Cockatrace's physical attack, its special attack would then be raised, and vice versa. In tandem with its signature move, Cockatrace would be an absolute powerhouse legend fitting of its grandiose typing. Last but not least, we have the Rock type, which is what I named Rockatorse. The entry for this Pokemon had a wide range of concepts, and all of them definitely rocked. The concept that I found the most interesting was this one by Leah, I guess. Based around the rock, an enormous bird from Middle Eastern mythology, a dodo bird, and the Kuluyaku from Monster Hunter. And being the avid Monster Hunter fan that I am, it's no wonder that this design caught my eye. So with this design, we turned it into Rockatorse, the stone Pokemon. We changed the stone elements of this design to make them look more craggy, kind of emulating a Stegosaurus's plates. And the tail is meant to look like a rudimentary stone axe, feeding more into the prehistoric feeling of this legendary bird. This Pokemon uses its mighty legs to run and kick rocks up at opponents, or down the mountains it resides in. This is shown in its signature move, Boulder Bash, a base 90 physical rock move that is 100% accurate and has a 20% chance to make the opponent flinch. This Pokemon's hidden ability could be Rubble Rouser, which is something akin to Toxic Debris, but instead of scattering toxic spikes, it spreads out Stealth Rock. And that was a legendary bird of every type, done with the help of our lovely community. A huge thank you to everyone who participated in this contest and celebrated 300,000 subscribers with me. And thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Monkey Pokemon. Each and every generation has had at least one of these stylish simians, and yet we have 8 whole types that have yet to be given to our primate pals. So in today's video, let's fill those types with Pokemon that will have you saying,
Monkey.
Hey everyone, Brandon here, and monkey Pokemon are definitely some of the most popular in the franchise. Actually, some of those Pokemon are apes, not monkeys. All monkeys are primates, but not all primates are monkeys, and the fact that while they wear themselves out, why don't we go ahead and talk about the first type in this video, Bug. And I really think you should be nicer to Inteleon. It's actually a really Unlike other mammals I've done across these of every type videos, the Bug type actually fits onto a monkey Pokemon quite naturally, because of the existence of one species of monkey, the spider monkey. So just make that idea literal, and you get something like Munkid and Arachnape from Oppo Fakemon's Metas region, a normal and normal bug type. Munkid, like your average child, and Satoshi Tajiri, have a special interest in bugs that live in the trees it inhabits, and will try to befriend them. It becomes influenced by these bug types and evolves into Arachnape when you have 2 or more bug types in your party. Now armed with 2 extra limbs, a stinger-like tail, and a nasty string shot, Arachnape swings fearlessly and effortlessly through its wooded home. It has a new ability called Buzz Off that gives priority to bug-type moves if this Pokemon's HP is full. A very fun pun and effect. On the topic of buzzing, let's move on to the electric type, which honestly shocks me that we haven't seen one yet. And before you say we already do with Electabuzz and Electivire, those are both based on Oni, and Electivire is like a Yeti, which is ape-like at best. I am talking full-on monkeys in this video here. Now don't you start again. An electric type monkey could be so fun though. We could see a potential 4th elemental monkey, which would match very well with the existing types, or we could see some brand new Pokemon like Voltape and Macrash that I worked with trainer Mats on as some Pokemon we could see in Paldea. These 2 are based on the Barbary macaque, the only native population of primates in Europe that live on the bottom tip of the Iberian Peninsula. I don't know if I ever talked about what kind of abilities or moves these 2 could have, so I think Voltape would probably have something like Vital Spirit, which could maybe progress into Iron Fist for Macrash. This design just looks like it was made to punch something, which makes sense given it was partly inspired by the punch-crazy beast, the Rajang from Monster Hunter. Maybe it could even learn Plasma Fist, or just Thunder Punch would suffice. But these next 2 monkeys don't even have to worry about taking that Thunder Punch, even though they're flying type. And regular viewers of the channel should know what I'm about to introduce. Of course, it is Hanger and Wrestlanger from the Devar region, which I worked with JJ Mons to create. They have Lightning Rod as a signature ability based on Hanuman's invulnerability to lightning. To learn even more about these aerial apes, check out this video here, after finishing this one of course. And if you're enjoying the video, I would greatly appreciate you hitting the like button, subscribing, and leaving a comment. It really does help. Now let's move on to some monkeys I had made just for this video. So next we have both the rock and the ground type, which is actually a special case that I'm quite happy with. As I've expressed in the past, the distinction between rock and ground types is such a confusing thing to deal with. So for this video, I decided to play into that with these next 2. Sexual dimorphism has been present in Pokemon since Gen 1, and was later expanded upon in Gen 4. It has come along with so many different ways of presenting itself: gender-exclusive evolutions, stats, colorations, abilities, etc. But you know what we have yet to see happen? Gender-exclusive types. Sexual dimorphism is also very present among primates. And one pretty radical example is that of the Mandrill, with the male Mandrill exhibiting a much larger size and fangs, and a bright blue and red coloration on their face and their well, I was gonna say backside, but yeah, sure, booty. So with this in mind, I came up with Sandrill, the variation Pokemon, that I also worked with JJmons on. The males are ground type and the females are rock type. They exhibit behavior similar to Mandrills, but not entirely like it, so please don't come for me if it isn't 100% accurate. I see you down there. Yep, go on back. That's it. Sandrill have a very unique system in how they operate. Female Sandrill will form clans of exclusively females, only letting males in during the mating season. They typically make homes near rock formations that have tree cover, building rock statues in their likeness atop the rock formation to trick predators that are mostly bird Pokemon, so they can pelt them with rocks from their mane to scare them off. The adult males spend most of their time out in the desert and arid plains, battling with other males to establish which of them gets to go to the females during the mating season. They hone themselves through battle, sanding themselves down and chiseling out a rougher, tougher Sandrill. When thinking of this Pokemon, the males having the blue part be glass for a ground type felt like such a natural fit to me and really inspired this whole concept. Their fur has special adhesive properties that allows the sand to collect on it, which they use to hurl at opponents, much the same as the females use their mane. These two give Rock Throw and Sand Attack a whole new meaning. Speaking of, if we've gone as far as differing their types, we can do so with their abilities and move pool as well. So males would get Sandveil and females would get Rockhead, though I think there could be a new ability for the females that works like a built-in Rocky helmet, considering that is literally what they have. Both could share the hidden ability Sand Force, which would really benefit both their types. Another type that benefits from that ability is Steel. For this type, I've decided to do something a bit different as well. So here we have Grabon, the linking Pokemon, a pure Steel type, that I worked with Kai Fakemon Asar to create. Grabon's design is fairly simple, with little gloves, a fur tuft that looks like a gear, and an infinity symbol as a mask. Well, that simplistic design and infinity mask aren't for nothing, because this Pokemon's ability is schooling. So when a bunch of Grabon get together, you get their school, or should I say, barrel form. This is of course a reference to the classic toy Barrel of Monkeys. These little monkey toys you can hook together in a long chain, and whoever drops the chain loses. The monkey that Grabon is inspired by is the Gibbon, these very long-armed monkeys that look just like the monkeys from the game. Grabon obviously takes part of its name from the Gibbon and Grab for the other part, but when put together it sounds like Grab On. Where the Steel type comes into play is that these toys were inspired by chain links for snow tires. The creator was fiddling with them and thought they would make a great toy. The way these Pokemon wrap around each other also refers to chain link fences, and their shiny references the red coloration of the toy itself. Grabon have a fierce sense of loyalty to their species. When they connect, it is like their minds become one as they form a nearly unstoppable defensive bunker. Because, as we all well know, apes together strong. And this next Pokemon would get absolutely wrecked by a Grabon, as it is the Fairy type. So here we have Seamadonna, the boisterous Pokemon, a Fairy Dark type. This ear-piercing Pokemon is based on the equally loud howler monkey found across much of South America. Their cries can be heard for miles, and as such, what better to mix it with than the vocal talents of an opera singer? This is where it receives part of its name, prima donna, the chief female singer of an opera, but also has become a term to mean a very temperamental person with an inflated view of their own talent or importance. This is where some of its dark typing comes into play. The other part and part of its design reflect the howler monkey gods from Mayan myth, Hunbots and Hunchoan. According to the Popol Vuh, a text recounting the myths of the Mayan Kaiche people, these two brothers were trickster musician gods that clashed with their half-brothers, the Maya hero twins, who tricked them into becoming monkeys. So Seamadonna is a bit of a trickster as well, using their voice to trick others as to its position before sneaking up on them and scaring them with a very loud note up close, which can momentarily deafen them. Its abilities could either be a new ability called Sinister Voice, which would work like Liquid Voice but turns all sound-based moves into dark, or just Pixelate, which would make all the sound-based moves it learns stab. Either way, dragon types definitely start quaking at the sound of a Seamadonna nearby. Speaking of, let's move on to the dragon type. For this type, my mind instantly went to one of the few mythical creatures I knew was part monkey, thanks to watching Boruto, the Nue. This Japanese mythological hybrid of monkey, raccoon dog, tiger, and snake is such a perfect fit for the dragon type. But I wanted to do more than just make a Nue Pokemon. That's when I looked into what kind of monkey the Nue takes from, the Japanese macaque. You know, the one famous for resting in the steamy hot springs. So with this in mind, I worked with Zemetrielmons to create Heizaru, the Mist Pokemon, a water dragon type. Rather than making the Niue elements like the snake tail and tiger stripes more literal, we use steam to illustrate them. Heizaru would definitely learn moves like Mist, Haze, Scald, or even Steam Eruption. I could also picture it having abilities like Steam Engine or Thermal Exchange given its inspiration's affinity for hot springs, though there isn't much of a point seeing as it is quad resistant to the fire type. I imagine it to be like the final evolution of a pseudo-line or some kind of sub-legendary Pokemon, if we were to ever return to Japan for another Pokemon region. Heizaru's name comes from Haze and Nihonzaru, which is the Japanese name for the macaque, which pretty much just means Japan monkey. If you ever visit a hot spring that looks extremely steamy, do not enter them. There could be a Heizaru lurking deep within its waters. Disturbing them is a mistake that could curse you to never enter another hot spring ever again. And that was a monkey Pokemon of every type. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Cats. Just like in real life, Pokemon is full of them, with so many different types. Big, small, cute, ugly. But there are 6 types we have yet to see these little fur babies become. So let's fill them with some perfect cat Pokemon. Meow everyone! Hey everyone, Brandon here. Hot take, but cats and cat Pokemon are some of the cutest things to exist, which makes it all the more tragic that I'm allergic to them. So just to spite my biology, we are talking about a cat Pokemon of every type. Though I said there were 6 types unfilled in the intro, there are 3 fringe cases worth discussing: water, fairy, and poison. For the water type, we have 2 Pokemon that are technically cats, Vaporeon and Suicune. Both suffer from the same problem: ambiguity. Vaporeon and all the Eeveelutions are a vague mix between a fox, cat, and a dog. And Suicune is a general beast that's based on a leopard, as confirmed by its designer. But if you want more of a water cat, we have Pentagon from the Cornera region, who I worked with JJ-Mons on, which admittedly is a mix of animals in itself, but is more upfront with its feline features. Then we have Fairy, which has yet another Eeveelution to represent it, Sylveon, that suffers from the same ambiguity issue. Also, Skitty and Delcatty would be perfect candidates for the normal fairy type, but I digress. For more of a literal fairy cat, we have Manticore and Fatale by Elite Four. They are both fairy poison type, based on Manticores, duh, and Femme Fatales. Speaking of poison, while these 2 could cover it, Trubbish is considered a cat by the Pokemon Company, which makes me like Trubbish even more than I already did. With those accounted for, let's talk about some types that are straight up missing. What did I just say? Anyway, let's start off with the rock type. For this, we have Cubble, the cub Pokemon, and Mount Tiger, the apex predator Pokemon. Both are rock dark types from Wesco region. We actually featured these in a fossil Pokemon of every type as well, as these cool cats are 2 of the fossil Pokemon of Wesco. To learn even more about them, check out Wesco's page or that previous of every type video. Both are linked in the description. And while you're down there, you might as well hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment to help others experience these cute cats. One of the cutest cats that was generally beloved by the internet was Grumpy Cat. Rest in peace, you sweet angel. But her legacy lives on with our next type, Ghost, which is represented by Grumper, the Yule Cat Pokemon, a pure ghost type. And its evolution, Chillinx, the Phantom Lynx Pokemon, a ghost ice type. Both are from Michael Ryan's Fearin region. As Grumper's category suggests, this line is based on the chilling mythical feline, the Yule Cat, from Icelandic folklore. It is said to prowl the frost-ridden countryside during the Christmas season and eat those who weren't gifted new clothing to wear before Christmas Eve. Appropriate for the time this video is coming out, but also incredibly terrifying. If you want to learn even more about these creepy kitties, go check out Michael's YouTube channel where he explains them and other Icelandic-inspired Pokemon more in depth. Another internet sensation comes to us through the bug type. Bugs and cats couldn't be the furthest thing from each other, so it will be insanely difficult to design one, right? Nope. Meet Kittypillar, the cat bug Pokemon, a pure bug type. This lovable little larva is based on a bug that exploded in popularity across the internet, the Chinese bush brown caterpillar, also known as the Hello Kitty caterpillar. The pun Caterpillar was too good to resist, and just look how cute this Pokemon is! Kittypillar spends much of their days resting in trees, eating double their weight in the foliage on said trees. When they feel sufficiently full, aka reaching level 20, they evolve into Caterfly, the cat-wing Pokemon, a bug flying type. The Chinese bush brown butterfly, like many of its species, uses a form of mimesis, mimicking the eyes of a predator such as an owl in hopes actual predators will leave it alone. This is the same case with Caterfly, whose big old wings look like the face and ears of a big old cat. In combination with its wings and the line across its face, the head of Caterfly looks like the nose of a cat, with the eyes being the nostrils and its spikes coming out like whiskers. Caterfly's wings are known for repelling bird Pokemon, but incidentally, they scare away other bug types too. Caterfly would most certainly get Mimicry as an ability, as it fits its concept and would help make it a bit more usable outside of just being absolutely adorable. It could also get a new move called Terrain Powder, which justs the ground around Caterfly, enhancing and amplifying the terrain, summoning one of the terrain effects and changing Caterfly's type. Kind of like how natural power changes depending on the area you're in. The default places that aren't natural, such as buildings and cities, would be electric terrain. Psychic would be tranquil places like a waterfall or significant cultural areas. Fairies would be forests, and grass would be grass. While we're on the topic of dust, terrain, and the ground, let's talk about the ground type cats. So allow me to introduce Dust Tabby, the sand cat Pokemon, a pure ground type, which I worked with Elisteva076 on. Its category is actually the animal it's based on, the sand cat, a desert-dwelling feline found across much of North Africa and West Asia, and they are so stinking cute! And just look at their kittens! We took this furry friend in more of a literal direction, being a cat made of sand, with some Egyptian elements thrown in to reference its North African origins and the well-known fact that cats were venerated by ancient Egyptians. As I said, Dust Tabby's body is entirely composed of sand. It can dissolve its whole body or even just parts of it into sand and then reconstitute them at will. Who needs a litter box when you can become one? Actually, that's kinda gross. Never mind. At level 30, while in a sandstorm, Dust Tabby evolves into Terracal, the Sand Master Pokemon, also pure ground type. Terracal's name comes from Terra, meaning earth, and Caracal, a type of wildcat also found in arid habitats across much of Africa and West Asia. Its category of the Sand Master Pokemon is well deserved. It can summon and control mighty sandstorms that are even capable of taking down flying types. Caracals are known for their incredible jumping ability, primarily to hunt birds, which it bites on the back of the neck, the part that Terracal's sand protects. So it would have an ability called Catapult. While being a fantastic pun, it also allows ground type moves to hit flying types and those with the ability Levitate. From there we move on to the fighting type. Move on. What is going on with me today? For the fighting type, we have Whipher, the Whiptail Pokemon, a pure fighting type who I also worked with Kai on. Despite its mischievous grin, it is not a dark type. It's just a bit cheeky. It will use its tail to whip at other Pokemon, like that one jerk who would crack towels at you in the locker room after gym class. It doesn't hurt the Pokemon that much, it's just more annoying than anything. Kind of like the actual move Tail Whip. The real thing to watch out for is this Pokemon's headbutt. That spiky fur doesn't play around, and is inspired by a North American cryptid called the Splinter Cat. This prickly pest would headbutt trees to try to expose raccoons and bees. The act of doing this gives them a massive headache and puts them in a foul mood, which is why Whipper is so rude to other Pokemon, because it uses the same method of hunting. Hurt people, you know? Whipper's name comes from whip and purr, but also comes from whippersnapper, old slang for a young person who makes trouble. At level 24, Whipper evolves into Whackhat, the Whacktail Pokemon, a pure fighting type. Whackhat's defining trait is most definitely their multiple tails, which comes from what they are mainly inspired by, a literal interpretation of the weapon Cat O' Tails, being a cat with 9, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tails. Its name not only comes from whack, which its tails do, but the Glawacus as well, another North American cryptid that is a mix between a panther, a lion, and a bear with the cackle of a hyena. You can see the panther-lion mix with the coloration, and a bit of bear with the more grisly fur on its face and arms. Also, the way their tails are posed is very reminiscent of the Displacer Beasts from D&D, or the Curls from Final Fantasy. Whackhat use their tails in a lashing fury, which leaves the opponent unable to strike back, which is their signature move, Tail Flurry, a base 20 fighting type attack that hits up to 5 times, with each hit having a 20% chance to flinch. Finally, we have the Dragon type, which is one of my personal favorites of this video. Okay, I don't know what's happening, but this is seriously freaking me out. Meowth? Meow? Ugh, whatever, I give up. I'm a cat now, I guess. Anyway, I was researching what could make for a good draconic cat, and then I came upon this beauty, the Tatzelworm. It hails from the folklore of the European Alpine region. It is a long, slender, lizard-like creature with the face of a cat, sometimes with either 4 short legs or 2 front legs and no hind legs. It is said to have poisonous breath and let out a high-pitched hiss. So what if we took this terrifying, toxic, scaly creature and made it adorable? Meet Tailong, the coiling cat Pokemon, a dragon normal type that I also worked with JJmons on. It is so cute and goofy, it's making biscuits on its own body. Look at those eyes! There is a twinkle there that I wish I knew how to find for myself. I adore this silly little cat. Or should I say this silly long cat, as Tailong is all tail. The long part isn't just a part of its name as a descriptor of its size, but also comes from long or lung, which are the Chinese names for dragons. The goofiness doesn't end at this Pokemon's face or vibe either. It can actually stretch out its lengthy body even further. You would think that Tailong took a bite of the gum gum fruit with how long it can get. This elasticity allows it to be extra evasive and adapt quickly in combat. In fact, that's its ability, adaptability. Moves like Wrap and Coil would definitely be learned, as well as its own signature move, Stretchy Strike. While generally just being fun to say, it's a base 65 physical dragon type move where Tailong extends itself out rapidly, slamming into the opponent and knocking their item off of them. Basically a dragon type knockoff, but mixed with adaptability makes Tailong an adorable little terror to behold. And that was a cat Pokemon of every type. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. With Easter being tomorrow, naturally my mind went to one thing: bunnies. So today I wanted to explore what a bunny or rabbit of every type might look like. We currently have about half the types taken up by these lagomorphic lads here, and no, I'm not counting Megalopony as it's form exclusive and is a secondary type. But anyway, let's get started filling these types with the ice type. And for this we have Bunsky from Fakemon's Metis region. Naturally, this frosty fellow with his goggles, snowsuit-like fur, long feet, and name are inspired by skiing. And as such, this Pokemon's favorite pastime is speeding down slopes. The higher up the mountain and more risk involved, the more fun it is for this Pokemon. And another rabbit Pokemon known for fun antics is our Dark type, Harlequer, the Jester Pokemon, a psychic Dark type who I worked with Maumistex to create. This clearly mischievous bunny was from my first Fakemon region, Cornera, and is inspired by Harlequins and the Harlequin Rabbit. Harlequins are known for being witful tricksters, hence its psychic Dark type, and Harlequin Rabbits are known for their starkly contrasting colors, like the stark contrast between psychic and Dark type. This Pokemon actually evolves from a normal type, so I gave it a new ability called Ruminate, which turns normal type moves into psychic type moves, like Pixelate with fairy types or Refrigerate with ice types. Harlequer can either be a defiant trickster or a loyal entertainer. Which side you get depends on its mood. But you know what will always keep you entertained? Today's sponsor, AFK Journey. Great news! AFK Journey is now available on iOS, Google Store for mobile, and on AFK Journey's official website for PC. AFK Journey is not just some idle game, but an innovative and enthralling fantasy RPG with stunning visuals, intricate gameplay mechanics, and PC-compatible side-scrolling elements which add a whole new dimension. In this breathtaking magical land, embark on an epic quest in AFK Journey as Merlin, gathering heroes across 6 factions and using different teams to develop new strategies and tactics. Explore large, diverse maps, solving challenging yet fun puzzles, and meeting interesting NPCs with effortless one-handed gameplay. AFK Journey also has a unique and interesting character customization system, offering a variety of looks for the protagonist. For those familiar with AFK Arena, Resonance is back along with the newly added Equipment Resonance. And it isn't called AFK Journey for nothing. Easily earn resources while you sleep, eat, or watch my videos on repeat. With AFK Journey's official release, it offers over 40 heroes for free, including epics, enabling players to explore diverse battle strategies. On top of that, through gradual distribution and by participating in events with a 7-day login, players can receive over 200 or more free pulls. Use my key AFK Journey 88 found in the description. Redeem it to receive 100 diamonds and 18,888 golden coins. Thanks so much to AFK Journey for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to it. You know what always bugs me when making these kinds of videos? Bugs. I mean, how do you mix a rabbit with an insect? Oh, that's? Are you sure that counts as a second insect has hit the tap? Okay, yeah, got it. Great idea, me. So allow me to introduce Sluggle, the slug bunny Pokemon, a bug water type that I worked with Kai Fakemon to create. This little guy is inspired by the sea bunny, a type of fluffy sea slug that, as its name implies, happens to look like an adorable itty-bitty rabbit. We tried to take a page from the Pyukumuku playbook when designing Sluggle to add to the cute factor. Just like its real-life counterpart, this Pokemon is a slug that just happens to take the appearance of a rabbit, but has soft fur that makes it just as snuggly as a real one, hence its name, which combines slug and snuggle. Sluggle spends most of its time on the sea floor, cuddling up against Pokemon that look cold. Its fur on contact releases a soothing and warming chemical that leaves the recipient feeling very pleasant. I know we all wanted to cuddle the sea bunny when we first saw it, so this Pokemon fulfills that dream. And from the realm of dreams, we travel to the realm of nightmares with the ghost type. And for this, I introduce you to Bunpire, the Bundead Pokemon, a pure ghost type that I worked with Fungusmon to create. When thinking of a supernatural rabbit to use as an inspiration for the ghost type, my mind went to none other than the classic book series Bunnicula by Deborah and James Howe. The books are about a mysterious rabbit with a vampiric appearance that sucks out the juice of carrots rather than eating them. Its haunting visage leads to it being blamed for every mysterious event that takes place in the different books, but spoiler alert, Bunnicula is innocent pretty much every time. The same can be said for Bunpire, who has a bit of an unsettlingly cute look. This has led to many rumors of the truly terrifying things that this Pokemon is capable of, when in reality it's just a little ghost rabbit. This is why, despite it having a darker coloration and vampires typically being evil beings, I refrained from giving Bunpire the dark type. This Pokemon does get a new signature move though, Drain Fang, a base 55 ghost type move that absorbs HP equal to 50% of the damage done to the target. Honestly, I'm kind of shocked we don't have a ghost type move that drains HP yet, so with this one we do. Draining someone's life force is also an attribute of our next rabbit, just in a different way. Meet Subliminaire, the Brainwash Pokemon, a steel psychic type that I also worked with Kai on. This robotic-looking Lapin is inspired by the kind of uncanny valley feeling of looking at a hair straight on, and a dated piece of technology, the TV antenna, which are also known as rabbit ears. Where the psychic type and its name come from are the idea of subliminal messaging. Media sneaking in hidden messages within your TV programming to brainwash you into doing exactly what they want you to do. Which is exactly what Subliminaire does as well. It uses its hypnotic eyes and powerful mind to persuade you into doing its bidding. This manifests in its signature ability, Brainwasher, which makes it so anyone who hits Subliminaire with a contact move becomes confused and has their stats reset. Though this Pokemon seems malevolent given its abilities, it really only uses them in the wild to make potential predators forget it even existed, becoming an echo of a memory. And echoes are what our next bunny is all about. So meet Ekop, the acoustic Pokemon, a pure rock type which I created with Kai as well. This Pokemon would honestly be right at home in the Cornera region, as it's inspired by the Red Rock Hare and by Red Rock's Park and Amphitheater found in Morrison, Colorado. This amphitheater is near and dear to my heart as I have been many times, and it is a fantastic music venue, and the acoustics go absolutely crazy. So infuse a rabbit's huge ears, which are perfect for picking up sounds, and you got yourself Ekop. Its category of the acoustic Pokemon comes from its ability, Acoustic Rock, which makes sound-based moves become the rock type, like Liquid Voice but for the rock type. Ekop use their ears that are abnormally receptive to sound to track other Pokemon and keep itself hidden amongst the craggy cliffs and mountain faces it calls home. I mentioned Cornera with our last bunny, which leads me into this next entry. There's been a Pokemon concept I've been wanting to redo for a long while, and I felt this would be the best time as our next entry is the flying type. In Cornera, I made a ground fairy type Dust Bunny Pokemon called Dust Bunny, and if I'm being 100% honest with myself, I always wished I had handled the concept differently, and the name is honestly just bad. So for our new and improved Dust Bunny Pokemon, meet Dustuft, the Dust Bunny Pokemon, a flying ground type that I also worked with Kai on. The specific kind of rabbit that Dustuft is inspired by are French Angora rabbits. With them looking like big old poofs, it matched perfectly with a Dust Cloud inspired Pokemon. Dustuft leap and bound high in the air over its habitat of dry plains and deserts. Some say it can become one with the wind and float forever despite not having wings. Speaking of wings, we move on to the dragon type. I had a surprisingly tough time combining a dragon with a rabbit. I went through many ideas in my head and nothing clicked. But then one idea hit my brain and oh boy did it click. I tried to think of a winged rabbit, which led me to the Wolpertinger, a Germanic creature that has the head of a rabbit, the body of a squirrel, the wings of a pheasant, and the antlers of a deer. Move over, Jackalope. There's a cooler rabbit cryptid in town. The chimeric nature of this creature made me think of, well, a chimera, a mix between a lion, goat, snake, and sometimes a dragon or an eagle. And then I thought of another kind of rabbit breed, the lionhead. And all those concepts fused in my head to create Wolperush, the whirlwind Pokemon, a dragon flying type that I also worked with Fungusmon on. Wolperush are known to be fast and furious creatures, able to create mighty vortexes of wind by flying in circles around an opponent. This Pokemon would absolutely learn Dragon Rush, Whirlwind, and Hurricane along with a new move, Acceledrake, a base 30 priority physical dragon type move that raises speed by one stage. Basically like a weaker Accelerock that also raises speed. And last but certainly not least, what would this video be without an Easter Bunny Pokemon? So for the fighting type, we have Lapaint, the Color Splash Pokemon, a fighting fairy type that I also worked with Fungusmon on. Lapaint can summon a sticky paint-like substance from the tips of its ears that they will throw like grenades at their opponents, exploding in a vivid display and covering their foes. This is their signature move, Color Splash, a base 50 special fairy type move that lowers the target's speed by 2 stages. The base concept of this guy was, what if the Easter Bunny was rad as hell? And that's basically it. And that's it for this video. Thank you to our lovely members that you can see some of on screen for supporting the channel with their hard-earned money, which you can also do by hitting that join button. Thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.